Hey guys, tonight we are clocking in for one of the hardest jobs in 1960s America. A job with no salary, no time off, no title anyone respected, and a boss who walked in every evening expecting a hot dinner. The all-day working life of the American stay-at-home mother. Not a hobby, not a life of leisure, not the smiling woman in the vacuum cleaner advertisement. No, a full-time operation run by one person, alone, for free, forever. Performed so pleasantly that nobody ever noticed how heavy it was. Before we tuck in, I'm really glad you are here. If this channel helps you fall asleep, tap subscribe so you can find your way back tomorrow night. And leave a comment telling me where you are listening from and what dish your grandmother used to make that was suspended, against its will, inside a wobbling tower of gelatin. Then get comfortable, turn the lights off, pull the blanket up, and for once let somebody else make the dinner. Ideally something that is not congealed. Because did you ever stop to picture what a woman actually did between the first cup of coffee and the moment her husband came home? Who was licking 1,200 stamps by hand for a free toaster? Why did the cake mix companies make you crack in your own egg? Purely so you would feel less like a fraud. What is the correct face to make while turning a salad out of a mold? Was Betty Crocker even real? And what do you reach for? In the dead middle of the afternoon, when you have everything a woman is supposed to want and still feel strangely like a ghost. Congratulations! You have just landed in a brand new suburban house, 1963. The percolator is already gurgling. There is a shirt to press before a man you love wakes up and fails to notice it. 3 children who will need identical breakfasts in slightly different sizes, and a floor that expects to be waxed on your knees by noon. The jello in the refrigerator is watching you. Good luck. You are awake before the house has decided to be. It is not yet 6, the room is still cold from the night, and you are the first person in the family who is required to exist. Nobody set an alarm for you. You are the alarm. You swing your feet onto the floor, find your slippers, and move toward the kitchen in the dark, because the day does not start when everyone gets up. The day starts when you get up and make it possible for everyone else to. The kitchen is cold, blue, and silent, which is the last real quiet you will get until the house is asleep again. You fill the percolator and set it going, and it begins its slow performance on the stove, gurgling and hissing and filling the room with a bitter, dark smell that arrives long before the coffee does. The percolator is in no hurry. It has never once been in a hurry. It takes its 10 minutes because it has privately decided that 10 minutes is fair, and you are not in a position to argue with the one appliance in the building that controls the caffeine. On a bad morning, it could rent itself out as a hostage negotiator. While it works, you start moving, because standing still is not a thing the morning permits. You wipe the counter, set out the skillet, and run the next 90 minutes in your head in the exact order they have to happen, because everything downstream depends on that order. A woman named Mrs. Delmar, 3 doors down, plans her whole morning the night before on a little pad she keeps by the telephone. You plan yours in the dark, at a cold stove, which is its own kind of pad. Nobody taught you this. You just absorbed it, the way you absorb weather. You watched your own mother rise first into a cold kitchen, and now you rise first into a cold kitchen, and one day a small person asleep down the hall will do the same, and assume it is simply how mornings are made. It is a job handed woman to woman, unpaid, unwritten, and never formally explained. You wake up one day married with a percolator and somehow know the entire routine by heart. Outside, the light is going from black to grey. You can hear the milk truck down the street, the clink of glass bottles, a small mechanical proof that other people are awake and working while the world sleeps. It is oddly companionable. You are alone in your kitchen, but you are alone at the very same hour as a great many other women in a great many other kitchens. First all of you lighting the same fire, all of you the first one up, all of you already 3 tasks deep into a day that has not officially started. The coffee finally comes. You pour a cup and drink it standing, because sitting down to drink it would be a luxury, and luxury has been scheduled for later, which is to say, never. This first cup is not for pleasure. It is fuel loaded into a machine that is about to run 16 hours without a proper stop. You hold it in both hands, feel the warmth move into your fingers, and allow yourself exactly 1 calm, private, unbothered minute. It is the best minute of the day. It is also, by a wide margin, the shortest. Then the floorboard above you creaks. Someone is stirring. The house has decided, at last, to be awake, and the instant it does, the day stops being yours. You finish the cup. You set it in the sink. You square your shoulders at the foot of the stairs like a woman about to step on stage, because in a sense you were the first one awake, and your whole job now is to make certain nobody ever finds out how early that was. You have a man to launch. He needs to be fed, dressed, packed, and pointed at the driveway within a fixed window, and the whole operation runs through you. His breakfast has to be hot when he sits down, his coffee has to be refilled without being asked, and the shirt you pressed last night has to be waiting where his hand expects it. He is not being difficult. He simply lives inside a system where these things appear, and you are the part of the system that makes them appear. The eggs go into the skillet the moment you hear the water shut off upstairs, because timing is the entire art of this. Too early and they sit and go rubbery. Too late and he is checking his watch, which he does with his whole arm, a small performance of a man who has somewhere important to be. So you have learned to cook backward from his footsteps, to read the house like a train schedule, to have the toast browning at the exact instant he reaches the bottom stair. It looks like luck. It is engineering. He sits, he eats, he reads the paper, and the paper is its own small ceremony you are not invited into. You refill the coffee. You slide the plate away when it is done. You are, for these 10 minutes, something between a wife and an extremely attentive waiter at a restaurant, with exactly one table and no tip. He is not ungrateful. Exactly. He simply does not see the work because the work has been designed, by you, to be unseeable. A thing done well in this house is a thing nobody notices at all. The lunch is already packed and sitting by his hat. You made it while the eggs cooked, because your hands do not get to do one thing at a time. A sandwich wrapped tight. Something from the cookie jar. The whole thing folded shut and waiting. A small, quiet, portable proof that someone at home was thinking of him hours before he would open it in an office you have never once seen. The shirt is the last act. It hangs where it always hangs, pressed the night before, the collar crisp with starch, still carrying the faint, warm smell of the iron. He puts it on without comment, which is the highest review it will ever receive. You spent 20 careful minutes on that shirt at the board last night while he slept. He will wear it into a day that has no idea you exist, and it will hold its shape until evening, which frankly is more loyalty than most things offer. Then comes the doorway, and the doorway has a ritual. Your husband, whose name is Walt, pats his pockets in a fixed order every single morning, the same order without fail. Wallet, keys, comb, wallet again, a small anxious frisk of a man confirming that he still exists. He finds everything, of course, because you are the reason everything is findable. He says something about being late. He kisses you on the cheek, or he forgets to, depending on the morning, and then he is gone, into the car, down the driveway, out into a world that will actually pay him for his trouble. The door clicks, the house exhales. You stand for 1 second in the sudden quiet with a dish towel over your shoulder, watching a launched man grow smaller down the street. Then you turn back around, because there are 3 more people upstairs who also need to be fed, dressed, and aimed at a door, and not one of them can yet knot a tie, find a shoe, or be trusted alone with a hot skillet. The launch of the man, it turns out, was the easy half of the morning. The hard half is upstairs and the hard half argues. You now have to wake the children, which is less like waking people and more like negotiating with several small, unreasonable governments. Each one has to be pulled out of sleep, put into clothes, filled with breakfast, and equipped with a lunch, all before a bus arrives that does not care about anyone's feelings. You move between bedrooms doing the same 3 tasks in slightly different sizes. Someone cannot find a shoe, someone does not want the eggs today despite wanting the eggs every previous day of their life. Each child wakes in a different weather system, and you have to read all of them at once. The oldest is sleepy, stubborn and starving, and treats being woken as a personal betrayal. The middle one is up instantly and talking, already narrating a dream nobody requested, wandering the hall with one sock on. The baby is a separate negotiation entirely, conducted mostly in noises. You are not so much waking 3 children as opening 3 different envelopes, each containing a mood you did not choose and now have to manage before 8. Dressing them is a war of attrition fought on the floor. A sock goes missing the instant you need it, then reappears somewhere no sock has any business being. A shirt is suddenly scratchy, a decision the child arrives at only when it is already halfway on. You are down on your knees, threading small, stiff feet into shoes, buttoning things, wrestling arms into sleeves, while the clock on the wall keeps its own opinion about how this is going. The whole scene has the calm dignity of loading cats into a canoe. Breakfast is served to a panel of very short critics. The eggs, beloved yesterday, are today an outrage. The toast is the wrong toast. Somebody wanted the other cup, the blue one, the one currently in the sink. You referee, you toast again. You produce the blue cup like a magician who hates his act, because the bus is coming, and a hungry child at 9 is a problem that lands squarely back on you. So they eat, more or less, in the loose way children eat, which is to say suspiciously and with frequent complaints. It is less a breakfast than a hostage negotiation conducted over syrup. The lunches come together in the gaps, assembled while you do 4 other things. A sandwich apiece, cut the way each child insists on, because a triangle and a rectangle are, to them, entirely different foods. There are, by their reckoning, approximately 7 wrong ways to cut a sandwich, and you have found all of them. Something from the cookie jar, which is the small daily bribe that keeps the whole economy running. You fold the sacks shut and line them up by the door, a neat row of packed intentions, each one a tiny lunchbox letter from a mother who will not be there at noon. Denny, the middle one, eats standing up with one sock still on, delivering the full plot of his dream between bites, a boy entirely at peace in a house that is quietly on fire around him. You slide his other sock onto his foot while he talks. He does not pause. He does not notice. He has never once wondered how his shoes end up tied, and that, in its way, is the whole job working exactly as designed. Then, the bus. Coats on, sacks grabbed, a fast inspection at the door, a kiss aimed at a moving target. They are gone, out into the grey morning, growing smaller down the sidewalk in a loose clump. The house drops into a sudden ringing quiet, the kind you can almost hear. You stand in it for a moment among the wreckage of breakfast, and then you look at the table, the counter, the floor, the sink, and you understand that the morning has not ended. It has simply changed jobs. The people left, but the work stayed behind, the way it always does. You did not decide that Monday is wash day. Your mother decided it, and her mother decided it, and by the time it reached you it had the force of law. So on Monday you stand in front of the machine and begin sorting the week's clothes into piles by colour and fabric and how filthy the wearer managed to get. If you have an automatic washer, the week just got easier by a margin your husband will never fully understand. If you have a wringer, you feed every piece through by hand. The sorting alone is a skill nobody credits you for. Whites here, colours there, the good things separate from the play clothes, and a special quarantine for whatever a child has done to the knees of his trousers. You check pockets, because a child's pocket is a small museum of the week, and you have learned the hard way what a forgotten crayon does to an entire load. You treat the stains one by one, rubbing at collars and cuffs, negotiating with grass and gravy and blood and things you would rather not identify before you have finished your coffee. Then the water. It comes into the tub and the whole room takes on that particular laundry smell, soap and bleach and a little bluing, sharp and clean and slightly stinging in the back of the throat. If the machine is automatic, it churns away on its own, bucking and shuddering and slowly walking itself an inch across the floor toward the door, as though it has somewhere better to be and intends to get there mid-cycle. You have time now, in theory. In practice, you use that time on the 4 other things always waiting. Mrs. Kowalski next door still runs a wringer, and you have watched her at it, feeding each shirt between the 2 rollers, cranking the water out, her whole shoulder in the work, a sock coming out the far side flat as a playing card. She is faster at it than you would be, because she has done it 10,000 times. She does not complain about it either. She just leans into the handle with the calm, grim, unbothered focus of a woman who has made peace with a machine that would happily take a finger. The water is never quite the right temperature for your hands, hot enough to get things clean, and cold enough by the 3rd load to leave your fingers red, wrinkled, and aching, and you plunge them in anyway, because the wash has never once cared about your hands. By noon your knuckles are raw and there is a permanent damp patch down the front of your dress where the wet basket rides against you. Nobody warned you that clean laundry is paid for in your own skin, one Monday at a time, but here you are, paying it. The volume is the part that never ends. A family of 5 generates an astonishing tide of cloth, and it comes at you every single week without pause. Sheets and towels and shirts and dresses and the baby's countless small things, all of it dirty again the moment it is clean. The whole cycle a patient, relentless, and bottomless wheel that turns whether you push it or not. That new automatic washer at the store runs over $200, which is roughly 100 hours of a factory man's pay, and it is still, hour for hour, the best bargain your household will ever be offered. Because the machine, when you have one, does not really save you time. It gives the time to the next task in line, so you load and you start it and you turn to the sink of breakfast dishes while it runs, one ear on its churning, the way a mother keeps one ear on everything. The wash is going, the kitchen is waiting, the beds are unmade. It is not yet mid-morning, and you are already 3 loads and several rooms into a Monday that your grandmother, your mother, and now you have all agreed, without ever discussing it, belongs entirely to the laundry. You carry the wet wash outside because a dryer is a luxury your house may not have yet, and even if it does, the line is free and the sun is included. You pin each piece to the rope where lard spins, working down the basket, arranging shirts and sheets and small trousers in a long flapping row. The whole job is a running argument with the weather. You are watching the sky the entire time, because a cloud can undo an hour of work, and rain on a Monday is a personal insult. The basket is heavy and the wash is cold, and the water off the wet cloth runs down your wrists and into your sleeves while you work. You keep a handful of clothespins in your apron pocket and a couple more clamped in your teeth because a woman hanging wash has never once had enough hands. You shake out each piece, snap it flat with a crack, and pin it up, and slowly the empty line fills with the shape of your whole family, flapping and dripping in the breeze. The wind is your partner and also your enemy. On a good day it does half the work, drying and freshening everything with that clean outdoor smell no machine has ever managed to fake. On a bad day, it turns the sheets into sails, wraps a wet nightgown around your face, and tries to walk off with a pillowcase down the yard. You fight it item by item, and it does not fight fair, and yet you keep coming back out here, because a sheet dried in the sun comes in smelling like the sky, and a sheet dried in a machine just comes in. Winter is its own particular cruelty. The wash freezes on the line, and you bring in shirts that are stiff, flat, and faintly ridiculous. A man's frozen undershirt standing up on its own in the kitchen like a startled ghost. You drape it over a chair to thaw. You do this all season, cold hands and cracked knuckles, because the calendar changed but the laundry did not, and the laundry has never once accepted weather as an excuse. There is a rhythm to it once you find it, a kind of meditation you did not sign up for. Reach, shake, snap, pin, and down the line you go, the basket lightening, the rope filling, the whole morning moving through your hands one wet garment at a time. Your shoulders learn the reach, your fingers learn the pins. And somewhere in the repetition your mind wanders off to somewhere pleasant and entirely private, which may be the only holiday the day is going to hand you, taken standing up in the yard with a mouthful of clothespins. The line is also, whether you like it or not, a public performance. Every woman on the street can read your wash from her own yard, and they do. Grey whites, a stain left in, a line hung sloppy, all of it gets quietly noticed and quietly filed, the Yelp review nobody on the street will ever admit to writing. Mrs. Kowalski hangs hers by size and colour in perfect descending rows, sharp as a drill team, and you have caught yourself straightening your own line after glancing at hers. Nobody says a word about it. The line says it for you. The wash flaps. The clothespins hold. The sky, for now, cooperates. And when it is all up, you stand back for one honest second and look at it. The whole family rendered in wet cloth against the grey morning, and it is, in its plain way, a kind of accomplishment. Then you pick up the empty basket, because in a few hours you will be back out here to take every piece down, fold it, and carry it in, and tomorrow it becomes something else you have to iron. The line is never really finished. It just goes quiet between shifts. You wake up on Tuesday knowing you are going to spend a large part of it standing at a board. This is ironing day, and in your house ironing does not mean a few shirts. It means his dress shirts, the children's school clothes, the dresses, the tablecloths, the pillowcases, the handkerchiefs, and, because you are the kind of household that does this, the bed sheets. The basket beside you is full and does not appear to be getting smaller. You plug in the iron, wait for the heat, and reach for the first collar. There is a whole order to a man's shirt, and you know it in your hands. Collar first, then the yoke across the shoulders, then the cuffs, the sleeves, the two front panels, the broad back. You sprinkle water from a bottle or shake it off your fingers, and the iron comes down with a hiss and a small cloud of steam and that warm, faintly scorched smell of hot cloth that means the day has properly begun. Press. Lift. Turn. Press. It is repetitive, exacting, and strangely absorbing, the way any work becomes when your body knows it better than your mind does. Starch is where the artistry hides. A collar without starch is a collar that gives up by lunch. A collar with too much could cut bread. You have found your own amount, the exact stiffness that makes a shirt look crisp, confident, and freshly bought without soaring into a man's neck. And that amount lives nowhere but in your own judgment. Nobody could write it down. You just know it, the way you know when the bread is done by the sound the crust makes when you knock it. The iron itself is a heavy, hot, temperamental thing, and you have the small faded scars to prove a lifetime of respecting it not quite enough. In summer, the work turns genuinely punishing. The heat of the iron piling onto the heat of the day until the kitchen feels like the inside of a kettle, and your dress goes damp and sticks to your back. You open a window that accomplishes nothing. You press on anyway, because the basket does not shrink out of sympathy, and Tuesday, as a rule, has no mercy in it at all. The sheets are the argument you have with yourself every week. Ironing a bedsheet is, by any sensible measure, a small act of madness, a thing seen by no one and unmade within a single night's sleep. And yet you do it, because your mother did it, and because a bed made with pressed sheets is a bed that announces a certain kind of woman lives here. So you wrestle the great flat acres of cotton across the board, folding and pressing and folding again, ironing something that will be a wrinkled heap by tomorrow morning. Mrs. Delmar, who claims to have found a shortcut for everything, swears she skips the sheets entirely and has told you so twice, leaning over the fence with the breezy authority of a woman announcing a scientific breakthrough. You nod. You go home. You iron the sheets anyway, because the fence is one thing and your own linen closet is another. The permanent press fabrics they keep promising, the ones that will end all of this, are still mostly a rumour at the store. Until they arrive, the board is where Tuesday lives. An hour passes, then two. Your back sets up its familiar complaint. The radio plays, the pile shrinks by inches, and one by one the shirts come off the board and onto hangers, crisp and warm and smelling a little of steam, a small parade of order you built with your own arm. You will hang them in his closet in a neat row, and he will pull one out tomorrow without a thought, because that is exactly what all of this was for, to make a pressed shirt feel like something that simply grows in a closet overnight, quietly, on its own, by no hand at all. You have a baby, which means you have diapers, and in this decade a diaper is a square of cloth that comes back. There is no packet you throw in the trash. Every diaper you take off the baby goes into a pail with a lid, and the pail fills faster than seems physically reasonable, and at some point the pail becomes your problem to empty, soak, launder, and fold. If you can afford it, a service takes the dirty ones away and brings clean ones back. If you cannot, the service is you. A baby goes through a startling number of these in a day, and the number does not care what else is on your list. So the pail in the corner of the bathroom is always working, always filling, a quiet, patient, faintly menacing presence that you have learned not to think about too directly. You keep the lid down. You keep a box of baking soda nearby, waging its small chemical war against the truth. And still, on a warm afternoon, that corner announces itself with a frankness no polite person would. The folding is its own strange art. A clean diaper is just a square, and it becomes a diaper only through folding, and there are as many folds as there are opinions, each mother convinced her method is the correct one. You fold yours the way your mother showed you, into a shape that fits your particular baby, and you do it fast, in a stack, one after another, until there is a neat white tower of them ready on the shelf. There is a pin involved, and the pin lives very close to a soft belly, which is a small daily test of your nerve and your aim. The disposable kind is out there now, barely. You have heard of them, a paper diaper you simply throw away, tried out somewhere the year before last, and the idea sounds frankly like science fiction. But they are dear and hard to find, and most women you know would no sooner throw away a diaper than throw away $1. So the cloth stays, the pail stays, and the great weekly boil of white squares stays right where it has always been, on your stove and on your list. None of it waits for a convenient hour, either. The pail fills on Christmas, and fills when you're sick, and fills at the worst possible moment of the afternoon, right when you have finally sat down. A baby has no concept of your schedule, and would be frankly insulted by the suggestion that it should have one. So you get back up, again, and deal with it, again, because the alternative is a rash and a crying baby, and a crying baby is a sound engineered by nature itself to make sitting down impossible. If you use a service, the man comes on a set day, and it is genuinely one of the small miracles of your week. He carries off the reeking bundle and leaves a stack of clean ones, laundered and folded and smelling of soap, and asks nothing of you but the fee. Mr. Pruitt runs the route on your street, cheerful in a way that seems impossible given his cargo, and he swings the fresh bundle onto your porch with a little two-handed heave and tips his cap like a man delivering roses. But a service is money, and money is the thing there is never quite enough of. So for most of these weeks, the whole operation is yours, start to finish, soak and boil and wring and hang and fold and pin, a private industry running in the background of everything else you do. It is humble, endless, unglamorous work, the kind history does not write down, and it is also, in its plain way, an act of devotion repeated a dozen times a day. The baby will never remember a moment of it. That, more or less, is the point. You are building a childhood nobody will recall, out of clean cloth and safety pins, one square at a time. You make the beds every single morning, and you make them properly, with the corners tucked and the sheets pulled tight enough to satisfy a woman who will never inspect them but whose voice lives in your head anyway. This is not the only tidying of the day. The magazines recommend 2 tidy times when there are small children, so you will pass through these same rooms again later and undo the undoing that the children will have done. The house does not stay clean. The house is a thing you clean, present tense, forever. The bed itself has a proper method, and you learned it from your mother the way you learned everything, by watching and then by doing until your hands took over. Bottom sheet smoothed flat and tight, top sheet folded back a precise hand's width, the corners tucked under at a crisp angle that a nurse would recognize. Then the blanket, then the spread, then the pillows squared at the head like guards on duty. It takes a couple of minutes and it will be destroyed in 8 hours, and you make it anyway, because an unmade bed in a made house is a small confession you are not willing to sign. The truth is that none of this stays done, and that is the part that quietly wears at you. You are not building anything that lasts. You are holding a line against entropy, hour by hour, and entropy has more soldiers than you do, most of them under 4 feet tall and armed with sticky hands. You wipe a surface and a child redecorates it. You square a room and it comes apart behind you like a wake behind a boat. Cleaning a house with children in it is genuinely like shoveling the walk while it is still snowing. The magazines have opinions about all of this, delivered in a bright, encouraging, quietly threatening tone. 2 tidy times a day, they advise, once mid-morning and once before the mister comes home, so the house always looks its best for its most important audience. You notice, reading between the glossy lines, that the house is being kept nice for everyone except the person who is actually in it all day. The audience arrives at 6. You are just the stagehand who never gets to sit in a seat. So you move through the rooms doing the small, constant and thankless maintenance that has no name and no end. A toy returned to its bin, a cushion straightened, a ring wiped off a table, a scattering of crumbs chased down and killed. None of it is hard. All of it is endless. It is the household equivalent of blinking, a thing you do without deciding to, thousands of times, and would only notice if you somehow stopped. There is a particular loneliness to labour that leaves no trace behind it. A carpenter can point to a chair, a baker can point to a loaf. You can point to a made bed at 9 and a wrecked bed at 9:15 and try to explain that the making still counted, that the holding of the line was itself the work even when the line did not hold. Nobody quite believes it. On the hard days, neither do you. Mrs. Farley over the fence again says she has simply given up on the boys' room and shuts the door on it like a crime scene. You admire the honesty and could never do it, because the closed door would still be there, in your mind, all day. And that, in the end, is the strange engine under all the tucking and wiping and squaring, the fact that the standard lives inside you now, installed young and running quietly, so that even alone in an empty house you would make the bed with hospital corners for an inspector who is never coming, who was, It turns out, you all along. You get down onto your hands and knees to do the floors, because in this house the floors are not simply mopped and forgiven. The linoleum has to be stripped of the old wax, scrubbed, and then waxed again by hand, buffed with a rag until it shines the way it is supposed to shine. There is no machine that does this for you. There is only you, a tin of paste wax, and a stretch of kitchen floor that will need exactly this treatment again next week, and the week after that. First, the old wax has to come up, which is the worst of it. You work across the floor on your knees with a rag and a bucket, cutting through the built-up shine, and the smell of the stripper and the ammonia rises up sharp enough to make your eyes water, in a room you cannot open too wide because it is cold outside and the heat costs money. Your knees find every hard seam in the floor. Your back files a complaint you have learned to ignore. This is honest, humbling, thankless labour, and you are performing it in a dress. Then the scrub, then the rinse, then the wait for it all to dry, and only then the wax itself, which is the part that almost feels like a reward. You work the paste in with a cloth in small circles, section by section, and then you buff it, and slowly the dull floor comes up under your hands into a deep, warm, honest shine. There is a real pleasure in it, the way there is pleasure in any surface you have personally forced into beauty. For one afternoon the kitchen floor gleams like the lid of a grand piano. And then, of course, someone walks on it. Usually within the hour, usually a child, usually in shoes, tracking the whole outdoors back across your piano lid without the faintest idea what he has done. You do not even shout. You have made a private peace with the fact that the shine was never really for anyone to keep. It was for you to have made, once, briefly, before the world resumed doing what the world does, which is get dirty again immediately. The products themselves are a small parade of confident brand names promising miracles. The scouring powder that whitens, the wax that lasts, the cleaner that does the work so you do not have to, according to a cheerful voice on the radio who has plainly never been on his knees in a cold kitchen. You know better. You know the cleaner is you, the labour is you, and the only thing that lasts is the next week's list. Mrs. Kowalski does her whole floor with a rag wrapped around a brick, gliding it with her foot, and swears it is easier on the back. You have considered the brick more than once. You could, in theory, do less. No one is standing in your kitchen with a clipboard and a stopwatch. But less is a door you do not open, because you have seen what a single skipped week does, the dullness creeping back in, the traffic paths going quietly grey, and you would rather stay down here on your knees than watch the shine lose by default. So you never skip it. The floor has learnt it can count on you, which is more than can be said for most things in this house. When it is finally done, you stand up slowly, because standing up is now a project, and you press your hands into the small of your back and survey the gleaming floor from the doorway. It is beautiful. It is spotless, glowing, and completely temporary. You wipe your hands on your apron, step back out of the room so as not to mark it yourself, and add floors to the long, silent list of things you will do again soon, on your knees, for a shine that belongs to no one and lasts about as long as a good mood. You take your can of scouring powder into the bathroom to fight a battle you will lose and then win and then lose again. There is a ring around the tub that returns like a debt. There is the sink, the toilet, the tile, and the mirror, each with its own product and its own method that you learned from your mother or a magazine and now perform without thinking. You shake the powder, you scrub, you rinse. The bathroom will be clean in an hour and used again in 2. The tub is where the real fight happens. A family leaves a ring, a pale grey tide line of everyone who bathed this week, and it does not wipe away politely. It has to be scoured, which means the gritty powder and a rag and your own shoulder, working the porcelain in hard little circles until the ring surrenders and the white comes back. Your hands are in it up to the wrist. The powder gets under your nails and dries out your skin, and by the end your knuckles have that tight, raw, over-scrubbed feeling that is the actual smell of a clean bathroom, if anyone were honest about it. The products come in bright cans with confident names, and you keep a small arsenal of them under the sink. One for the porcelain, one for the glass, one for the toilet that you handle at arm's length with a grimace and a strong opinion about the whole arrangement. The advertisements show a smiling woman gesturing at a gleaming tile as though it cleaned itself and she just happened by. You have never met that woman. You suspect she does not scrub. You suspect, in fact, that she has a woman exactly like you somewhere off camera, on her knees, out of frame. The grout between the tiles is the perfectionist's trap, and you fall into it every time. You start on the tile, and then you notice the line between two tiles, and then you are attacking the grout with an old toothbrush like an archaeologist with a grudge, half an hour gone on a strip of grout roughly the size of a playing card that no guest will ever examine. You know it is excessive. You do it anyway, because you can see it, and once you can see a thing you cannot unsee it, which is the quiet curse of the whole job. The mirror gets vinegar and a sheet of crumpled newspaper, your mother's trick, cheaper than any spray and better than most. You wipe in wide arcs until it squeaks, and for a moment your own face swims up clear in the glass, flushed, damp, hair coming loose. A woman in the middle of her morning who has not paused to look at herself since dawn, and does not pause now either, because the toilet is still waiting, and the floor after that. Mrs. Bellamy from church swears she cleans her bathroom in 10 minutes flat, and you have decided, uncharitably, that this means one of two things about Mrs. Bellamy's bathroom, neither of them good. Your own takes the better part of an hour, done right, and you do it right. Because a clean bathroom is one of the few rooms in the house that stays clean long enough to be admired, if only by you, if only until the school bus returns. So you finish, and you gather your cans and your rags, and you take one look back at the gleaming, scoured, and briefly perfect little room. It smells of powder and vinegar and effort. It will hold this state for perhaps 2 hours before someone returns it to its natural condition, and you will be back tomorrow, or the day after, shaking the can again, because the ring, like the debt, always comes back, and you are the only one in the house who has ever once agreed to pay it. You sit down at the kitchen table with a pencil and plan what your family will eat for the next 7 days, because dinner does not happen by accident and the budget does not stretch itself. You have a fixed amount of money for food and a family that expects a hot, balanced meal every evening, and the distance between those two facts is closed entirely by planning. You think about what is cheap this week, what stretches, what can be leftovers on Tuesday, and you write the shopping list that the whole plan depends on. This is the part nobody counts as work, because it looks like a woman sitting quietly with a pencil, and a woman sitting quietly is assumed to be resting. In fact, you are running numbers, doing logistics, and solving the same puzzle every week with a different set of prices. How do you feed 5 people, 3 meals a day, 7 days running, on the housekeeping money, and make it varied enough that nobody complains and cheap enough that the figure at the bottom does not exceed the figure you were handed? It is arithmetic with a deadline and an audience. It is quiet, constant, and unthanked. Meat is the anchor and the enemy, the biggest line in the budget, so the whole week gets built around getting the most out of the least of it. A chicken is not a meal, it is 3 meals if you are clever, roasted the first night, picked for a casserole the second, and boiled down to soup with the bones on the third. A cheaper cut means longer cooking, and longer cooking means your time instead of your money, and you have made that particular trade so many times you no longer feel it as a choice. Your time is the currency the budget spends first. The cookbook helps, the fat red one every kitchen owns, its spine cracked and its pages freckled with old splatters like a diary of former dinners. Betty Crocker suggests, and you adapt, because Betty Crocker did not have your budget or your children or the particular cut that was on special this week. You have written your own notes in the margins over the years, corrections and warnings and the true cooking times, so that the book has slowly become half hers and half yours, a collaboration between a company and a real woman. It will never meet. You think in leftovers because leftovers are free money. Sunday's roast becomes Monday's hash. The heel of a loaf becomes bread pudding rather than trash. The vegetable water goes into the soup pot. Nothing that can be eaten twice gets eaten once, and this is not thrift as a hobby. It is thrift as survival, the quiet daily engineering that keeps a single paycheck feeding a whole family with a little left for the collection plate. The list itself is sacred, and you guard it like a document. Because the list is the plan made portable, the week translated into a column you can carry into a store, and if you forget it on the table you are lost among the aisles, buying by impulse, overspending on the very trip the list existed to control. So you check it twice, you add the staples running low, the flour, the coffee, the soap, and you fold it into your pocket. Mrs. Farley plans hers by the light of the radio the night before, and calls it her homework, which is closer to the truth than she knows. And you have both been doing this homework, ungraded and unpaid, since the week you married. You set down the pencil. The week now exists on paper. 7 dinners deep, balanced and affordable and invisible. Tomorrow you will make the first of them real, and the day after that the second, and by next Sunday the paper will be spent and the pencil will come out again, because a family is not fed once. A family is fed forever, one carefully planned week at a time, by a woman the economy has never once thought to pay. You take your list to the supermarket, and once you are inside, the list is only the beginning of the work. You are comparing prices, doing arithmetic in your head, deciding whether the cheaper cut is worth the longer cooking, and keeping a running total so you do not reach the register and discover you have overspent money that has other jobs to do. You have coupons clipped from the paper. You know what things should cost. The clerk sees a woman shopping. What is actually happening is a budget being defended aisle by aisle. The supermarket is a newish kind of place, bright and vast and stocked to the ceiling, and it is designed, every inch of it, to separate you from your money. The good things are at eye level. The dear things are placed where a tired woman with a child on her hip will reach without thinking. You know the tricks, or most of them, and you walk the aisles with a shopper's wariness, a general moving through territory that was laid out by the other side. Every display is a small argument, and you have to win nearly all of them to come home on budget. The arithmetic runs the whole time, a quiet ticker behind your eyes. This much for the roast, this much for the flour, a nickel saved on the store-brand soap, a coupon good for a dime off the coffee. You are adding as you go, holding a growing number in your head, while also keeping a child from unshelving the entire canned goods pyramid. And the number cannot be wrong, because there is no more where it came from. This is mental work of a high order, performed while smiling, and no one in the store would ever call it that. The meat counter is where you and the butcher conduct your weekly diplomacy. Mr. Dolan leans over the glass and tells you what is good today, and you tell him what you can spend, and between the two of you a compromise gets wrapped in white paper and grease pencil. He slips an extra soup bone into the parcel some weeks, a small kindness in a butcher's apron, and you thank him and both of you pretend it is nothing. It is not nothing. A soup bone is a whole extra dinner, and he knows it, and you know he knows it. The children, if they are with you, are a running siege on your resolve. They want the cereal with the prize, the cookies on the end cap, the bright, sweet, useless things placed at exactly their height by men who understood children perfectly and mothers not at all. You say no, and no again, and offer the small mercy of letting one of them carry the eggs, which converts a saboteur into an ally for the length of one aisle. The cart fills. The number climbs. Your hand hovers judges and puts two things back, because coming in under the figure is the entire victory, the invisible win that no one will congratulate you for, and you have gotten so practiced at it that you can feel $1 the way a sailor feels weather. At the register you watch the totals ring up, matching them against the number in your head, and when the clerk says the amount and it lands where you meant it to land, you feel a small private flush of something that is honestly close to pride. You hand over the housekeeping money, you take your change, and your stamps, and your receipt. Then you push the whole heavy week out to the car and load it in, and drive it home, and carry it in bag by bag, and put every single item away in its place, which is itself another 20 minutes of work that the word shopping does not begin to cover. The trip is not the errand it looks like. It is a campaign, fought weekly, won quietly, by a woman with a list in her pocket and a running total behind her eyes. You get stamps at the supermarket and the gas station, little green ones handed over with your change, and collecting them is a job that has quietly become yours. You bring them home, and at the kitchen table you lick the backs and paste them into books, row by row, because a full book is worth something at the redemption centre. It takes over 1,000 stamps to fill one book. You are building, one lick at a time, toward a toaster or a lamp or a set of luggage you will probably never take anywhere. The stamps come home loose in your handbag, a small green drift of them, and they accumulate in a drawer until you sit down to deal with them properly. The gum on the back tastes of paste and faint mint and vague regret, and by the 10th stamp your tongue has gone numb to it, and by the 50th you have started wetting a sponge in a saucer instead, because you are not, in the end, an animal. The books fill slowly. A full one takes 1,200 stamps, which is 1,200 small purchases and 1,200 small licks, an entire quiet economy conducted with your own mouth. You are farming loyalty points the way a shopper farms them at Costco, except here you pay in saliva. Nearly everyone is doing this. Word around the street is that most every household in the country collects them, and you believe it, because the redemption catalogue is thicker than the telephone book and more closely read. Women study that catalogue the way men study the sports page, memorizing what a full book buys, what 2 books buy, what the toaster costs against the mixing bowls against the little wristwatch on page 40. It is a wish book, and the wishing is half the point. The children love the pasting, which is both a help and a catastrophe. Small tongues, small fingers, stamps stuck to the table, the cat, a forehead. Denny once pasted an entire strip onto his own arm and wore it proudly like a medal for valor. You let them help because it keeps them close and busy, and because there is something sweet in the whole family bent over the book together, filling it row by row, a small, green, and patient harvest gathered at the kitchen table on a winter evening. What the stamps really give you is harder to name than a toaster. They are, quietly, yours. The paycheck is his, the house is in his name, the allowance is measured out, but the stamps are a currency you earned by shopping shrewdly, and what they buy is a small extra thing that came from your own cleverness rather than his wages. When you carry the filled books to the redemption center and walk out with a new lamp, you are carrying home proof that your management of this household produced something visible, something you can set on a table and see. That lamp is not really a lamp. It is a receipt for a year of careful spending. So you keep licking, keep pasting, keep the books stacked in the drawer, growing slowly toward whatever you have decided to want this season. Mrs. Bellamy is saving hers, 3 years running, for a set of good luggage, and everyone on the street knows it, and everyone quietly suspects the luggage is less about travel than about having, just once, something matched and new and entirely chosen by herself. You understand the impulse completely. You have a page marked in your own catalogue you have not told anyone about. The book fills, 1 green row at a time. The reward waits, patient as the pail, patient as the floor. And in a life measured out to you in someone else's dollars, this small, sticky project is one of the few things on the whole ledger that you get to add up, redeem, and call, without any argument at all, your own. You are making dinner from scratch because that is simply what dinner is. There is no other kind. You have your cookbook open on the counter, the fat red one that every kitchen on your street also owns, and you are working through the steps that turn raw ingredients and a fixed budget into a meal that has to be ready at a specific hour. Meat, a starch, a vegetable, something to finish. You are peeling, chopping, browning, and timing 4 things to arrive at the table at once, which is a small daily miracle nobody will mention. The timing is the whole feat, and it is genuinely harder than it looks. The roast takes the longest, so it goes in first and rules the schedule. Everything else has to fall in behind it. The potatoes want 20 minutes, the vegetable wants 10, the gravy wants your full attention at the exact moment. The table also wants setting, and a child also wants a bandage. You are running 4 clocks in your head at once, none of them agreeing, all of them yours, and the goal is a table where every dish arrives hot at the same instant, as though it were easy. Your hands do most of it without consulting you. Years of this have moved the knowledge out of your mind and into your fingers, so you can chop an onion while watching the pot, salt by feel, and know the roast is ready by a smell that changes in the last 10 minutes from raw to done. You do not measure much anymore. You are past the recipe now, using it the way a sailor uses a chart he has memorized, glancing down out of habit rather than need. The cookbook lady whose portrait smiles from the cover is not a real person, which is the sort of fact that stops you cold if you think about it too long. Betty Crocker was voted one of the most admired women in the country, and she is a drawing, an invention, a warm voice attached to a red spoon by a company that understood exactly what a lonely kitchen wanted. You admire her anyway. She has, after all, gotten you through more dinners than most flesh and blood relatives, and she has never once judged your gravy. Ah, the gravy. The gravy is where cooks are separated from the merely brave. It can seize, it can lump, it can break and go thin and greasy at the worst possible moment, and there is a particular held breath in the kitchen as you whisk the flour into the drippings and wait to learn what kind of evening this will be. When it comes together smooth, glossy, and rich, you feel a small surge of triumph entirely out of proportion to a bowl of brown sauce. When it does not, you fix it quietly and tell no one it was ever in doubt. The pot boils over. Of course it does. It always waits for the busiest minute. You wipe the stove, rescue the potatoes, and glance at the clock that says the man is 15 minutes out, and you find another gear you did not know you had, because you find it every single night. This is not cooking as a pleasure, the way the magazines like to paint it, a serene woman arranging parsley. This is cooking as a deadline job with no relief cook, performed daily, without applause, for diners who will complain if the peas are cold and say nothing at all if they are perfect. And then it is done. 4 dishes, hot, together, on the table. The small impossible thing achieved once more. You call them in. They come, they sit, they eat, they scatter, and within the hour, the whole warm production is a stack of dirty plates and a memory nobody will keep. Tomorrow you will do it again, from scratch, because that is simply what dinner is, and you are the only person in the house who has ever known that it was hard. You are making a molded salad, which means you are about to suspend food inside gelatin on purpose and serve it to people you want to impress. This is a company dish, a thing you make when the neighbours are coming or the occasion calls for effort you can display. You dissolve the powder, you arrange the pieces of fruit or vegetable, you pour, and then you wait for chemistry and the refrigerator to do the rest. When it is ready, you will turn it out of the mould and onto a plate, and it will stand there, trembling, being admired. The genre is at its height right now, and it is genuinely ambitious. Women are suspending things in gelatin that have no business being suspended. Cottage cheese and pineapple and shredded carrot, and in the braver households, shrimp, olives, and cubed ham floating in a savoury green tower as though a garden salad had been flash frozen mid-explosion. You have a whole shelf of copper moulds in fluted shapes and a stack of recipes clipped from magazines, and a quiet competitive streak that comes out precisely when Mrs. Delmar mentions what she is bringing. The making is more finesse than labour. You dissolve the powder in hot water, and the kitchen fills with that sweet, chemical, unmistakably artificial smell that means something festive is underway. Then comes the tricky part, the arranging, because the fruit wants to float or sink depending on its mood, and to get the pieces suspended evenly you have to let the gelatin set halfway to a nervous half-firm wobble before folding them in. Rush it and everything sinks to the bottom in a sad heap. Patience is the secret ingredient, and patience is a thing you have in short and expensive supply. Then the mould goes into the refrigerator and you wait, and the waiting is its own small anxiety, because the salad is a company dish and company is coming, and there is no second chance if it fails to set. You open the door and peek, you close it. You resist the urge to poke it, which would leave a fingerprint on your reputation. Mrs. Delmar once brought a mould that had not quite taken, and it slumped on the plate like a tired hat, and everyone was very kind about it, which was the worst part, and nobody has forgotten. The unmoulding is the moment of truth, a small act of daring performed over a plate. You dip the mould in warm water for exactly the right count, not too long or the edges weep, and then you invert it, and you hold your breath, and you give it the little practice shake that either releases a perfect glistening tower or a disaster. When it slides free whole, gleaming and intact and quivering slightly, it is genuinely beautiful, in the way only something both edible and architectural can be. And there it sits, jiggling softly on its bed of lettuce, radiating a quiet, wobbling menace. Because that is the strange truth of the moulded salad, that it is less a food than a trophy, a thing made to be looked at first and eaten second, a demonstration that the woman of this house had the skill, the mould, and the refrigerator to pull off something so gloriously unnecessary. It says modern, it says capable, it says I have arrived, and I have brought aspic. The guests will admire it, take a polite, trembling spoonful, and remember chiefly that you made it. You carry it to the table with both hands, level and careful, like a woman transporting something that might at any moment develop opinions. You set it down at the centre where the light catches it, and for one shining moment before the fork goes in, your salad holds the whole room, glistening and proud and quietly absurd, and so, quietly, do you. You are standing in front of a box of cake mix, weighing a small moral question that the food companies designed specifically for you. The box promises to save you time, and it will, and part of you feels that using it is a kind of cheating, as though a good mother builds a cake from raw flour and virtue. The company knows you feel this way. That is why the box tells you to add a fresh egg of your own, so that your hands are in it, so that at the end you can call it yours. This is the strange new bargain of your kitchen, and it comes wrapped in bright cardboard. The convenience foods are pouring onto the shelves, cake mixes and canned soups and instant potatoes and a dozen bright, cheap and hopeful powders that promise to hand you back an hour. And you want that hour, badly because you know exactly what it costs to make everything from nothing. But every shortcut arrives with a small hidden tax, and the tax is guilt, quietly printed between the lines of the recipe on the side of the box. The egg is the cleverest trick anyone ever played on you, and you half admire it even as you fall for it. The very first mixes needed only water, and women would not buy them, because a cake that needs only water is a cake that needed no mother, and no woman wanted to serve her family proof of her own unnecessity. So the companies took the powdered egg back out and told you to add a real one, and suddenly you were cracking a shell and beating a bowl, and the cake became, in some deep and satisfying and completely manufactured way, yours again. It worked. It works on you right now. You crack the egg, you beat the batter, you smell it baking, and by the time it comes out warm and golden, you have genuinely forgotten that most of it came from a box, a factory sealed. You have added the one ingredient that mattered, which was your own labour, however small, and your own name attached to the result. The company sold you a shortcut and then sold you back your pride at doing it, and you paid gladly for both. The frozen dinners are the same story told in foil. A whole meal in a tray, turkey and potatoes, and a sad, bright square of dessert, heated in the oven and eaten in front of the television, the tray itself shaped, cleverly and shamelessly, like a little screen. On a hard night they are a genuine mercy. And still you feel the small pull of it, the sense that a real dinner comes off a stove and not out of a freezer, that the tray is a tiny surrender no one is grading but you. Nobody is grading you but you. That, it turns out, is the whole trap. Because the standard you are failing to meet was never written down by your husband or your children, who would happily eat cake from any source at all. It was installed in you young and reinforced daily by every advertisement, every magazine, every neighbour's from scratch pie, until you carry an invisible judge in your own apron pocket who sniffs at a box of mix. The companies did not invent that judge. They just learned to sell to her, one clever redesigned recipe at a time. So you serve the cake, and it is delicious, and the children have no idea and no interest in its origins, and your husband takes a second piece and says it is good, and you accept the compliment with a small, complicated, private smile. You saved an hour today. You paid for it in a currency you cannot quite name, and tomorrow you will make the same trade again, standing in front of the same bright box, having the same quiet argument with a woman who lives only in your own head. You spend your day answering the door, because the commerce of this decade comes to you. The milkman leaves his bottles on the porch in the early morning and takes the empties. The bread truck comes. The fuller brush man knocks with his case of brushes, and the Avon lady arrives with her sample tray, and each one expects a few minutes of you. You are not just a customer. You are the person home during the day, which makes you the entire retail audience for a small army of men and women with cases. The milkman is the first and the most faithful, a fixture as reliable as the sunrise. The bottles appear on the porch cold and sweating, the cream risen in a plug at the neck, and the empties you rinsed and set out the night before are gone, carried off in his wire crate with a clink you could set a clock by. Mr. Ridley has run this route for years, and he knows which houses take extra on the weekend and whose baby switch to the richer milk, and he leaves a note under a bottle when the bill is due, discreet as a butler. Then the parade proper begins, and it does not consult your schedule. The fuller brush man raps at 10 with his case of bristled miracles, a brush for every surface God made, and several he did not, and he is so relentlessly cheerful that turning him away entirely feels like kicking a puppy in a necktie. You buy a scrub brush you did not strictly need. He tips his hat, promises to return, and you both know he will, because a man who sells door to door has memorized your door. The Avon lady is a different visit altogether, softer, more social, halfway between shopping and gossip. She comes in, she sits, she opens her tray of little lipsticks and creams and tiny sample vials, and the living room fills with a sweet competing fog of perfume testers. You try a shade on the back of your hand. You do not need it. You buy the small hand cream anyway, because she is pleasant and it is a rare adult conversation, and the cream is a tiny, cheap, permitted luxury in a budget with almost no room for you in it. The truth is that some of these visits are the closest thing to company you get before noon. You are alone all day with people who cannot yet spell, and a friendly adult at the door, even one selling brushes, is a small window opening in a long shut-in morning. So you linger a moment longer than the sale requires. You ask after his family. You take the human minute where it is offered, from whoever happens to be carrying a case up your walk. But every visit is also a small siege on the budget, and you the lone defender, because each smiling caller has come to separate you from a little money, and it is your job, gently and constantly, to decide which small yeses you can afford and which you have to turn away with a kind word and a firm door. You have gotten good at the graceful no, the one that leaves everyone's dignity intact, because these are neighbours of a sort, and you will see them again next week and the week after that. It is patient, endless and cheerful diplomacy conducted in a house address, all day, one knock at a time. By afternoon, the bell has rung 5 times and you have bought a brush, some cream, and a loaf you did not plan on, and turned away 2 more with a smile. You add it up in your head and wince a little and forgive yourself, because a house that is open all day is a house that leaks small change, and you are the seal on all of it, standing at the door in your apron, the treasurer and the doorman and the only adult in the building, answering the same knock the whole decade long. You are hosting a Tupperware party this afternoon, which means your living room is about to become a sales floor, and you are both the venue and the star witness. You have invited the women from the street, made coffee and something to serve with it, and arranged the chairs so everyone can see the demonstration. A saleswoman will show off the plastic bowls and the famous burping seal, there will be games, and everyone will buy something. If you host well, you earn a little yourself, which is a rare and welcome thing in an economy that pays you nothing. The preparation is real, because you are, for one afternoon, running a small event out of your front room. The good cups come down from the high shelf. The coffee cake gets made from scratch the night before, because the party is judged, quietly, on the hostess as much as the plastic. You tidy the living room to a standard usually reserved for the minister, plump the cushions, hide the mending basket, and put on a nicer dress, because today the audience is not your family but the entire female population of the block, and they notice everything. The saleswoman arrives with her case and her patter, and she is genuinely good at this, a professional in a way the world does not quite let her admit. Mrs. Vance runs the demonstration like a stage act, holding a bowl aloft, pressing the lid, lifting one corner to let the air out with a soft, satisfying burp, and pronouncing it sealed against spills, ants, and the general chaos of a family refrigerator. The women lean in. The plastic gleams. It is, against all odds, a bright, hopeful, and thrilling promise of a container that actually closes and stays closed in a life where almost nothing does. Then come the games, which are the secret engine of the whole afternoon. Silly little contests, a prize for whoever has the most buttons in her handbag, a laugh that goes around the room and loosens everyone up, and slowly the party stops being a sales pitch and becomes the thing it was really for, which is women in a room together, off the clock, laughing at nothing. For 2 hours, nobody is a wife or a mother. Everyone is just Ruth and Dot and Eleanor, drinking coffee, being funny, being seen. That is the part the plastic is really selling, though no one says so. The company understood, better than most, that a woman alone in a house all week will pay real money for an afternoon of company, and it wrapped that afternoon around a bowl and called it a party. It is commerce dressed as friendship, or maybe friendship smuggled inside commerce, and honestly you do not much care which, because the loneliness it relieves is entirely genuine even if the occasion for it is not, and there is money in it, quietly, for the women who run them. Because the hostess earns a little for opening her home, and the saleswoman earns a real living, and some of the women on your street have discovered, to their own surprise, that they are good at this, that they can sell and organize and lead a room, skills nobody ever thought to name in them. Mrs. Vance bought a second car with what she made, and says it plainly, and every woman in the room hears the thing under the sentence, which is that she earned it herself, in dollars, with her own name on them. The party winds down, the orders get written up, the cups get gathered, and the women drift back to their own houses and their own suppers, waiting to be made. You count your small hostess reward and tuck it away, and you carry the good cups back up to the high shelf, and the living room becomes just a living room again. But for one afternoon it was something else, a marketplace, a clubhouse, a stage, and you were the one who opened the door and let all of it in. You put the coffee on because the women from the neighbourhood are coming over, and this is not idle socialising, whatever your husband might call it. It is the only part of your day that happens among adults. You spend most of your waking hours in a house with people who cannot yet tie their own shoes, and the coffee clatch is where you find out what is happening on the street, who is struggling, whose husband lost his job, And who has a remedy for the thing your baby keeps doing at 3 when the whole house is asleep and you are not? They come mid-morning, once the men are gone and the older children are at school, and they bring the babies who cannot be left and sometimes a coffee cake still warm from the tin. There is no invitation exactly, just a rhythm the street settled into long ago, a knock and an open door and the coffee already going. You gather at somebody's kitchen table, 4 or 5 of you, babies on hips and on the floor, and for an hour the isolation of the morning cracks open and lets some daylight in. The talk looks like gossip and is actually infrastructure. Who is sick? Who is expecting? Whose mother-in-law has moved in and made everything worse? Which store has the good roast on special this week? And which butcher shorted Eleanor on her order? This is how information moves on a street with no other network, passed woman to woman over coffee, and it is more accurate and more useful than anything printed in the paper. You come for the company and leave knowing everything you need to run your week. But underneath the news runs something quieter and more important, which is the checking in. In a room full of women doing the same impossible job, you can say the true thing, the tired thing, the thing you cannot say to your husband because he would worry or would not understand. You can admit the baby has not slept, that you cried in the pantry on Tuesday, that some days the walls feel close, and the answer will not be alarm. It will be a nod and a refill, and someone saying, quietly, that she knows, because she does. Mrs. Delmar holds court at these, of course, opinions on everything, a remedy for every ailment, a verdict on every marriage on the block, delivered with the confidence of a judge and the mercy of one too. Ruth is the kind one who notices when somebody has gone quiet. Eleanor makes everyone laugh until the coffee is in danger. You have a place among them, a role, a chair that is understood to be yours, and there is a real comfort in being known by women who see you the way your family never will, as a person and not a service. For 1 hour, you are not on duty. For 1 hour, someone hands you the coffee. Because that is the thing about the clutch that the men who dismiss it never grasp, that it is not a break from the work so much as the thing that makes the work survivable. A woman alone all day in a house can start to feel like the last person on earth, and an hour among others doing the same solitary labour puts the ground back under her. It is quiet, ordinary, and necessary medicine, taken in a kitchen, poured from a percolator, and it costs nothing but the coffee, and is worth more than most things that cost a great deal. Then the babies fuss, and the clock turns, and the hour ends the way it always does, everyone rising at once, gathering their own children, drifting back to their own kitchens and their own long afternoons. You wash the cups. The house goes quiet again around you. But you carry the hour with you into the rest of the day, a little warmer for it, a little less alone, restocked on the one thing the job never provides and the clutch always does. You are raising your children with a paperback on the shelf that half the mothers in America also keep within reach. It is the Dr. Spock book, and it has quietly rewritten the rules your own mother followed. Where she was told to feed on a strict schedule and not spoil the baby with too much holding, your book tells you to trust yourself and pick the crying baby up. You still read it constantly, checking your instincts against its pages, which is a funny thing to do with a book whose first message is that you already know more than you think. The book lives on the shelf and also, effectively, in the house, consulted at all hours for every fever, rash, tantrum, and strange new noise a small body can produce. The cover is soft and worn, the pages fanned and stained, certain sections opened so many times the book falls right to them. When the baby runs hot at midnight and you are alone and frightened, it is the book you reach for, calm and plain and reassuring in your hands, a doctor who makes house calls and never once looks at his watch. What the book changed, really, was permission. Your mother's generation was taught to be firm, to schedule the feeding by the clock, to let a baby cry so it would not become a tyrant, to keep a certain cool distance in the name of building character. Dr. Spock came along and told mothers, gently, to relax, to follow the child and their own good sense, to pick the baby up when it cried because a held baby is not a spoiled baby but a comforted one. To your mother, it sounded like chaos. To you it sounded like a window opening. And yet the freedom comes with its own quiet weight, because trusting yourself turns out to be harder than following a rule. A schedule tells you what to do. Instinct only tells you to decide, over and over, all day, with no one to blame but yourself if you decide wrong. So you read the book not for orders but for company, for the steadying voice that says you are probably doing fine, which is, in the end, the thing a tired mother most needs to hear and least often gets. The man himself is becoming famous in ways that have nothing to do with babies, and it puzzles you a little. Dr. Spock is out marching now, against the war, a household name for a household reason suddenly turning up on the news with a picket sign, and there are people beginning to mutter that the children he taught you to comfort have grown up soft and unruly and are causing all the trouble in the streets. You do not much follow the argument. You just know the book got you through croup at midnight, and a man who did that has earned a little strangeness. The truth is, he did not really teach you anything you did not have. Because the deepest thing the book ever told you was the first thing, printed right up front, that you know more than you think you do, and it took you years to understand that this was the whole medicine and everything after it was just footnotes. The schedules and the fevers and the tantrums all have their pages, but the real gift was permission to trust the woman doing the raising, which nobody had thought to give a mother before, and which you find you needed more than any instruction. So the book stays on the shelf, soft-spined and splattered, half instruction manual and half friend, and you go on raising your children mostly by the light of your own judgment with a paperback nearby for nerve. One day these children will be grown and will have opinions about how they were raised, as children do, and you will know, whatever they decide, that you did it with love and good sense and a worn paperback, which is more of a plan than most people get. You are, at this moment, doing several stages of motherhood simultaneously, because the children arrived close together and none of them waited their turn. You may be pregnant while nursing one and toilet training another and answering a fourth who has a question about death right now, in the kitchen while the pot boils over. There is no single job called mothering here. There are many jobs stacked on top of each other, all urgent, all yours, and all happening in the same 15 minutes between one meal and the cleaning up of it. The children came like weather close together, because that is what happened in these years, and so your house holds the whole span of early childhood at once, in different sizes, all needing you at the same time. The baby needs feeding on the baby's schedule, which is no schedule. The toddler is mid-training and mid-accident. The middle one has a scrape and a grievance. The oldest, feeling suddenly ancient at 7, wants to know something enormous and unanswerable, and wants to know it now, while you have a spoon in one hand and the toddler by the collar in the other. You have become, out of pure necessity, a person who does 4 things at once and does not drop any of them, though you could not tell anyone how. There are, by your count, exactly 3 acceptable ways to hold a baby and stir a pot at the same time, and you have quietly invented a 4th. You stir with one hand and catch a falling cup with the same arm. You nurse the baby while reading a story aloud to the others, doing the voices, keeping the plot straight. You answer the question about death honestly and briefly and get back to the potatoes. Because dinner does not pause for the big topics, and neither, it turns out, can you. The pregnancy runs underneath all of it, a second full-time job your body is doing while the rest of you does the first one. You are tired in a way that has layers, the tired of the night before and the tired of the months to come, and still the morning demands the same performance, the same lifting and bending and hauling of children who have no idea they are being carried by a woman also carrying another. You do not stop. Stopping is not a feature the arrangement includes. There is a particular kind of noise to it, the household at full stretch, everyone needing at once. A cry, a question, a timer, a knock, a small voice repeating your name at a volume calibrated by nature to be unignorable. You have learned to sort it in an instant, to know which need is bleeding and which is merely bored, to triage a room full of small emergencies while your hands keep working. It is loud, constant, and simultaneous air traffic control conducted in an apron, and the tower never closes. Somewhere in there the pot boils over. It always picks this exact moment. And you handle that too, wiping the stove with the baby on your hip and the toddler suddenly, urgently, requiring the bathroom, and you get everyone where they need to be with a calm that would look, to an outsider, almost supernatural. It is not supernatural. It is just practice. Thousands of hours of it, the ordinary heroics of a woman who has learned to hold a great many falling things in the air at once, because the alternative is letting one hit the floor. By nightfall you could not reconstruct the day if asked. It was not a sequence of tasks so much as a single long simultaneous surge, everything at once, from before dawn until the last small body finally sleeps. You did the work of several people wearing one dress. Tomorrow you will do it again, still pregnant, still nursing, still training, still answering the unanswerable over a boiling pot, and no one will ever quite believe how much of it was happening at the very same time. You are refereeing again because the children have discovered a fresh injustice and both parties have appealed directly to you. Somebody took something, somebody looked at somebody crossed an invisible line in the back seat or on the rug or at the table, and the case has landed in your court because you are the only judge in the building. You have to sort out who did what, deliver a verdict that both children will find unfair, and restore an order that will last, by your own estimate, somewhere between 4 and 9 minutes. The disputes arrive all day, a bottomless docket of tiny grievances, each one presented to you as the gravest matter in human history. He is touching my side. She is breathing loud on purpose. He got the bigger half, the blue cup, the good chair, the last turn, and the injured party wants justice and wants it from you, immediately, at full volume, with witnesses who are also the defendants. There is no small claims court in this house. There is only your kitchen, and you, wiping your hands to hear the evidence. You have developed the whole apparatus of a working legal system, mostly by instinct. There is discovery, in which you determine what actually happened versus what each child passionately believes happened. There is precedent, because you ruled on this exact crayon last Tuesday. There is sentencing, calibrated to the offence, a separation, an apology, a loss of privilege, and there is the appeal, which is instant and loud and which you deny with the weary authority of a judge who has heard it all before and will hear it all again after lunch. The hardest part is that fairness is impossible and everyone can feel it. Split the cookie exactly and they will measure the crumbs. Rule for one and the other is wronged for life. Rule for neither and you are a tyrant. You have learned that the goal is not actually justice, which cannot be achieved between two people who both wanted the same single toy, but merely a ceasefire, a return to quiet, a peace held together with distraction and a firm change of subject. You are not a judge so much as a tired, patient and powerless diplomat with no leverage and a boiling pot. Denny and his sister can go from allies to enemies and back inside a single afternoon, and you are dragged into every reversal. 1 minute they are a united front against the injustice of nap time. The next they are at war over the ownership of a stick. You broker the treaty, they sign it in tears, and it holds until the next stick. You have stopped expecting the peace to last. You aim only to make it, again and then again, because a made peace that breaks is still better than an open war that does not. And through all of it, you must appear perfectly fair, which is the real trick. Because a child forgets the crayon in an hour but remembers for 40 years the day you took the other one's side unjustly. So you weigh each tiny verdict with a care wildly out of proportion to the stakes, knowing you are laying down something that will last. You are not really settling arguments about toys. You are teaching them, one absurd ruling at a time, what fairness feels like, whether the world owes it, and whether the powerful can be trusted to give it, and you are the entire Supreme Court on the subject. So you deliver the verdict, restore the calm, and get back to whatever you were doing before the bell rang, knowing the docket is not cleared, only paused. In a few minutes there will be a new injustice, a new appeal, a new pair of tearful litigants at your knee. You will hear the case. You will rule. You will keep the peace one more time, in a courtroom no one recognizes as a courtroom, presided over by a judge who is also the cook, the bailiff, and the only adult who ever shows up. You go to the salon once a week, and it is less a treat than a piece of infrastructure. Your hair gets washed, wound onto rollers, baked under a dome dryer, and teased and sprayed into a shape that is expected to survive for 7 days. That is the deal. You are not buying a hairstyle for tonight. You are buying one for the whole week, which means once you leave that chair, the entire style becomes something you have to protect, defend, and sleep around until it is time to come back and do it again. The appointment is a fixed point in your week, the 1 hour reliably spent on you, and you guard it like the standing engagement it is. You settle into the chair and hand yourself over, and there is a real luxury in it, the warm water, another woman's hands in your hair, an hour in which nothing is required of you but to sit. The shop hums with dryers and talk, a warm, gossipy, sharply chemical room full of women all buying the same weekly hour, and for a little while you are among them, off duty, being tended instead of tending. The process itself is an engineering project performed on your head. The rollers go in tight, section by section, pinned close to the scalp, and then you sit under the great dome dryer, which descends over you with a roar of hot air and holds you there, flushed and roasting and unable to hear a word, for the better part of an hour. It runs at one setting, roughly the heat of a kettle, and applies it to your skull with total indifference. It is not comfortable, exactly. It is the price of the structure, and the structure is the point, and you have long since decided the roar is a fair trade for a week of not thinking about your hair. Then comes the teasing and the shaping, the hair coaxed up and out into the tall, sculpted architectural shape the times demand, and finally the sealing, a cloud of hairspray so thick and so sharp it stings your eyes and stands the whole creation into place like lacquer on a banister. Rosetta, who has done your hair for years, gives it the final blast with the confidence of a woman shellacking a boat, and steps back to admire a structure now rigid enough to survive weather, children, and most forms of light contact. And here is the strange part, the part that turns a hairstyle into a chore. Because the set has to last a week, you cannot simply live in it. Plusting, combed, you sleep sitting carefully, on a special pillow, or with your head wrapped in a satin scarf, so as not to crush the work. You do not wash it. You defend it nightly against flattening, against humidity, against the ordinary friction of being alive, wrapping it up like a fragile heirloom each evening, so it survives to be presentable one more morning. 7 days is a long time to protect a single hairdo. You manage it anyway. Because a woman is expected to be put together, always, even at home, even seen by no one but the milkman and the children, and the weekly set is how that expectation gets met without a salon budget you do not have. It is beauty rationed and stretched, exactly like the meat. 1 professional hour made to cover 7 days through careful daily maintenance. And the maintenance, of course, is yours, added to the list like everything else. Even your own hair is a thing you have to keep. By the 7th day, the set has softened and sagged and lost its nerve, and you go back to Rosetta and the roaring dome and start the whole cycle again. Another hour that is almost yours, another week of scarves and careful sleeping. It is vanity, the men would say, not understanding at all. It is not vanity. It is a uniform, worn on the head, required by a job that never once agreed to let you look as tired as you actually are. You are giving yourself a permanent at the kitchen sink, because the salon costs money and this box costs less. You have the kit laid out, the little rods, the chemical solution, and the instructions you will follow exactly, because the difference between following them and not is the difference between curls and a small disaster. You wind your hair onto the rods, you apply the solution, and then you wait while the chemistry does its work and fills your entire house with a sharp smell that will linger long after your hair has decided what it is going to do. The kit is a marvel of the age. A whole salon service folded into a cardboard box you can buy off a shelf, and it costs a fraction of what Rosetta charges. This is the appeal, plain and simple. A woman who cannot spend on the weekly set can still have curls, at home, on her own, for the price of a box and an afternoon, and her willingness to do something slightly alarming to her own head over the kitchen sink. It is beauty on the budget, and the budget, as always, is the reason. The winding is fiddly, close work, and doing it to your own head is like trying to wrap a package you are standing inside of. You section the hair, you roll each piece onto its little rod, tight and even, tucking the end paper just so, and you cannot quite see the back, so you go by feel and by a hand mirror held at an angle that shows you a stranger. It takes patience and a strong arm held overhead for a long time, and by the end your shoulders ache and your head is a bristling field of rods, and the hard part has not even started. The solution is the hard part, and the solution does not forgive. You apply it carefully, and it goes to work with a smell so sharp, so ammoniac, so aggressively chemical that it clears your sinuses and probably the neighbours, a reek that seeps into the curtains and lingers for 2 days like an unwelcome houseguest. This is the actual sensation of vanity in a modern kitchen, standing over the sink with your eyes watering, timing the burn by the clock, hoping the chemistry stops where you want it and not somewhere regrettable. Timing is everything, and this is where home permanents go to die. Leave the solution on too long, and the curl goes tight, frizzy, and furious, a poodle you did not order. Take it off too soon, and the whole afternoon relaxes back into nothing within a week. So you watch the clock like a woman diffusing something, you test a curl at the exact minute, and you rinse the instant it looks right, because the margin between a good perm and a catastrophe you will wear in public for 3 months is measured in minutes. And then the neutralizer, and the unrolling, and the held breath. Because you have gambled an afternoon and your own head on a box, and now you take the rods out one by one and learn what you have won, and it could be soft, bouncy, flattering curls, or it could be a result that has you reaching for a headscarf and an excuse. Mrs. Kowalski once came out of a home perm looking so startled that her husband asked, carefully, if she was feeling well, and she has told the story on herself ever since, laughing, the way a woman laughs at a war she survived. Usually, though, it comes out fine, better than fine, a whole set of curls you made yourself for almost nothing, and you comb it out at the sink and turn your head in the mirror and feel the small, specific pride of a woman who saved the money and took the risk and won. The house will smell of it for days, your shoulders will ache tomorrow, and your hair will hold its curl for weeks, a small, brave economy performed over a kitchen sink, with a box, a mirror, and a great deal of nerve. You are getting yourself dressed to a standard, and the standard applies even though almost no one will see you today. You are expected to be presentable inside your own house, which means real clothes, hair in order, a face put on, and quite possibly a girdle, all before the serious work of the morning begins. Over the top of it goes the apron, which is the one honest garment in the outfit, the one that admits work is about to happen. You are dressing not for company, but for a code that follows you room to room. The code is unwritten and absolute, and you absorbed it so young you no longer question it. A proper woman does not shuffle around her own home in a robe till noon. She rises, she dresses, she does her hair and her face, and she meets the day looking like someone, even if the only witnesses are a milkman and 3 people under 10. To let yourself go, even in private, even for a morning, is a small failure that would be visible to no one and felt keenly by you, which is exactly how the best codes work. The girdle deserves its own moment of respect, or dread. It is a garment of real engineering, meant to smooth and shape and hold a woman into the trim silhouette the times admire, and it does its job with the grim commitment of scaffolding. You put it on to run a household, to scrub floors and haul laundry and chase children, all while wearing a foundation garment that negotiates firmly with your ability to bend, breathe, and sit. That you do heavy physical labor all day inside it is a fact the magazines never quite address. The face goes on next, a quick practiced routine, a little powder, a little color, the lipstick that finishes a woman the way a period finishes a sentence. It takes only a few minutes and it is not optional, because a bare face reads, in the grammar of the time, as a woman who has given up, and you have not given up, whatever the afternoon may feel like. So you put on the small daily mask of competence and cheer, and it does, honestly, help, the way a uniform helps a soldier feel like one. And then the apron, over all of it, and the apron is the one garment that tells the truth. Everything else says lady. The apron says worker, and you wear it precisely because you are about to do the work the rest of the outfit pretends you do not. It ties on like a declaration, guarding the good dress underneath from the flour and grease and small sticky hands to come. It is the costume of the actual job, worn over the costume of the expected one. So you stand dressed, made up, girdled, and aproned, presentable to no one at all. Because the whole ensemble is aimed at an audience that is not in the room, a silent, constant, and inherited code you carry inside you, a sense of how a woman ought to appear that runs whether or not a single soul is watching. You look, at 9 on an ordinary weekday in an empty house, exactly as put together as if guests were expected, and the effort is entirely real and entirely unseen, which is the story of most of what you do. Even alone, you dress for the part. Mrs. Delmar claims she does her whole morning in curlers and her husband's old shirt and dares anyone to say a word, and you envy the nerve of it without once managing to copy it. You will put on the dress, the face, the girdle, the apron, every day, for a standard nobody enforces but you, because it was set in you long ago, and it does not come off with the apron at night. It is the uniform of a job with no boss in the building, worn faithfully, for a code that lives, it turns out, entirely inside your own head. You run the household on an allowance, which is to say you manage money that belongs, on paper, to someone else. His paycheck is the family's income, and out of it you are handed a set amount for groceries, supplies, and the running of the home, plus perhaps a little for yourself. Everything the family eats and needs comes out of that figure, stretched by your planning and your arithmetic. You are the treasurer of an operation whose funds are not in your name, and the better you manage them, the more invisible the managing becomes. The arrangement is so normal you rarely stop to look at it straight, but when you do, it is a peculiar thing. You do the shopping, the budgeting, the stretching, the saving, the deciding of 100 small financial questions a week, and you do it all with money that the law and the bank and the world consider his. You are, in every practical sense, the chief operating officer of this household, which is basically running a company you can be dismissed from for spending wrong, with no salary, no title on the door, and no shares in a business you keep alive daily with your own two hands. The allowance itself is handed over on a schedule, and there is a quiet delicacy in the transaction that neither of you names. It is generous or it is tight depending on the man and the month, and it comes with an unspoken accounting, a sense that you may be asked, gently or not, where it went. You keep the household running well within it precisely, so the question never has to be asked, because the question, however kindly meant, lands on you as a small judgment on the one domain that is supposed to be entirely yours. The pin money is the strange little coda to it, the small sum meant for you, for your own small wants. And here is the quiet trouble, that you have gotten so practiced at spending every dollar on the family that spending one on yourself feels almost like an error, a slippage in the books. The stocking you need, the small treat, the thing that is only for you, gets deferred and deferred because the machinery of your own thrift does not have a good setting for you as a legitimate expense. You are the one line in the budget you routinely underfund. Somewhere in a government office, a man with a ledger is adding up the whole nation's work, and not one line of it is you. He counts the washing machine your husband bought. He does not count the wash. He counts the paycheck. He does not count the woman who turns it into a life. Your whole economy runs off the books, in a kitchen, under an apron. The bank sees his account. The world sees his salary. Your management of all of it, the thing that makes a single paycheck actually feed a family, is nowhere on the books. And yet the household stands or falls on exactly that management. Because a paycheck is just a number until someone turns it into meals, clothes, shoes, a paid milk bill, and a little put aside. And you are the one who performs that alchemy, week after week, invisibly and well. Let the management slip and the whole comfortable machine wobbles, and keep it tight. And everyone assumes the comfort simply came with the paycheck. The better you are at it, the less anyone sees that a skill is being exercised at all. So you take the allowance, and you make it work, and you save your stamps and clip your coupons and defer your own small wants, and you keep the books of a business you do not own and cannot leave with a share of. It is the strangest job in the house, the one that handles all the money and holds none of it. You fold the last of the week's coins back into the cool, dented and familiar coffee tin, press the lid down, and reach for the pencil to start next week's list. You sit down at the sewing machine because a dress from the store costs more than a dress you make, and you know how to make one. You have a paper pattern pinned to fabric on the table, the tissue pieces cut and laid out, and the machine humming in front of you as you feed the seams through. You are making a dress or curtains or a school outfit for a child who will outgrow it by spring. The skill is ordinary in your world and would look like magic in another one, but here it just saves money. The machine is a good one, a Singer most likely, black, gold and heavy as an anvil, and it has the permanence of something meant to outlive you. It sits in its own cabinet or case, oiled and cared for, a serious tool for serious work, and when you press the pedal and it settles into its steady mechanical purr, the sound is one of the most productive in the house. A woman at her machine is a small factory, and the factory turns cloth and thread and a paper pattern into things the family actually wears. The pattern is where it starts, a printed tissue folded into an envelope with a picture of the finished dress on the front, and reading one is a literacy in itself. You lay the fragile pieces on the fabric, mindful of the grain, pinning and cutting with a care that cannot be rushed, because fabric costs money and a cut made wrong cannot be uncut. You match the markings, you follow the little printed symbols, you assemble the flat pieces in your mind into the shape they will become. It is geometry and thrift and art, all at the same table. Then the sewing itself, seam by seam, the fabric fed under the needle in a steady line, and the flat pieces slowly stand up into a garment. There is a deep, quiet satisfaction in it that the ceaseless cleaning never gives, because at the end of an afternoon at the machine there is a thing, a real finished thing, that did not exist that morning, and now hangs complete on the back of a chair. So little of your work leaves anything behind. This does. This you can hold up. The economy of it is plain and considerable. A store dress is dear. A homemade one is fabric and a pattern, and your time, as always, is the cheap ingredient, so the family is clothed for a fraction of the cost by the simple fact of your skill. You make the children's school clothes, and let them out as they grow, and turn a length of cheap cloth into curtains that make the front room look like somebody cared, because somebody did. And the somebody was you, and it is, quietly, a kind of authorship the rest of the day denies you. Because a floor scrubbed is a floor that gets dirty, and a meal cooked is a meal that gets eaten, but a dress you made walks out the door on a child and lasts a season, and comes back to be let out and worn again, a durable object with your hands all through it. Mrs. Bellamy makes her daughters' Easter dresses every year, matching, elaborate, the envy of the church pews, and the pride she takes is not vanity, it is the honest pride of a maker who made a thing well. You understand it entirely, you feel it at your own machine, so you sew, in the gaps, in the evenings, the pedal humming under your foot, and the pile of finished things growing slowly beside you, clothing a whole family out of cloth and patience, and a heavy black machine. It saves real money, which is the reason you would give if anyone asked. But it gives you something the saving does not, a chair where you make instead of maintain, and a small stack of finished, lasting, wearable proof that today, at least, you built something the house cannot immediately undo. You keep a basket of things that are not broken enough to throw away, which in your economy means they are not broken at all, just waiting for you. There are socks with thin heels to be darned over a wooden egg, hems to let down as children shoot upward, buttons to replace, knees to patch. You do this work in the gaps, in the evening with the radio on, turning clothes that have failed back into clothes that work. Nothing is discarded that can be repaired, because repairing it is free, and you are the one who is free. The darning is the oldest of the repairs and the most satisfying, a small act of resurrection performed on a sock. You slip the wooden egg inside to hold the shape, and you weave new thread across the worn heel, over and under, back and forth, rebuilding a patch of fabric out of nothing but yarn and patience until the hole is gone, and the sock is a sock again. It is humble, invisible, and quietly clever work, and the darned heel will ride inside a shoe when no one ever sees it, which is fine, because you are not doing it to be seen. The hems are the arithmetic of growing children, and you are always losing that particular race. A child shoots up over a season and suddenly the trousers are at half-mast and the dress is scandalously short. So you take them in hand and let the hems down, pressing out the old fold, revealing the darker, unfaded band of cloth that was hidden inside, buying another few months of wear before the garment finally, truly gives out and gets handed down to the next smaller child in line. Buttons are the small, constant emergency, forever popping off at the worst moment, and you keep a tin of orphaned ones for exactly this, a jangling little museum of every garment the family has ever owned. You match as best you can, you sew the replacement on tight with the small firm knots your mother taught you, and you send the shirt back into service. A missing button is a tiny thing, and a tiny thing left undone is how a household starts to look uncared for, so none of them stay missing for long on your watch. The patches are the last stand before defeat, reserved for the knees of boys who appear to travel everywhere on them. You cut a patch, you pin it, you sew it down over the ruin, and the trousers live to be destroyed another day. There is no pretending a patch is invisible. It announces itself, an honest square of thrift, and you have made a certain peace with that, because a patched knee is a working knee, and a working knee is a dollar not spent, and the dollar matters more than the vanity. All of it comes down to a single stubborn principle, worn smooth with use. Because in your house, nothing wearable is ever thrown away while a needle and thread could save it, and this is not a quaint habit but a genuine pillar of the budget, a steady, quiet saving stitched into the evenings. Every darned sock and let-down hem and patched knee is money kept in the family, earned not at any job but at the mending basket, by a woman turning the family's small daily failures back into function. It is the least glamorous economy in the house, and one of the realest. So you sit with the basket in the lamplight while the radio plays, and you work through it piece by piece, and slowly the pile of the failed becomes a pile of the restored, ready to go back into drawers and be worn and worn out and returned to you again. It never empties, this basket. Not really. It just goes down for a night and fills back up by the weekend, Another endless task with no finish line, another small devotion measured in thread, keeping a whole family clothed one saved garment at a time. You are canning, because it is late summer and the garden and the market are giving more than the family can eat right now, and none of it can be allowed to go to waste. The pressure cooker is going on the stove, rattling and steaming, and the counter is lined with glass jars waiting to be filled with tomatoes, beans, peaches, and pickles. This is hot, exacting work in an already hot kitchen, and you do it now so that in February there is a shelf of food you put up yourself, sealed tight against the winter you can already feel coming. The kitchen in canning season is a furnace, and there is no getting around it. The stove runs for hours, the pot boils and steams, and the heat piles up until the windows fog and your dress goes damp and clings to your back. You do it in the hottest weeks of the year, because that is when the food is ripe, which is one of nature's small cruelties, forcing the hottest work into the hottest days. You wipe your face with the back of your wrist and keep going, because the tomatoes will not wait for a cool afternoon that is not coming. The work itself is a production line staffed entirely by you. Wash the jars, scald the lids, peel and cut the fruit, pack the jars tight and hot, wipe the rims clean, seal them, and lower them into the canner to be processed for exactly the right time. Every step matters and none can be skipped, because a jar sealed wrong is not just wasted food but a genuine danger months from now, so you are careful, methodical, and exact, a woman running a small cannery in a house dress with a child underfoot. The pressure cooker demands a particular respect, hissing and rattling its little weighted cap like a furious tiny tea kettle plotting something structural. You keep an eye on it the whole time, minding the pressure, because everyone in the county knows a story about somebody's canner and a ceiling, and you do not intend to add your own kitchen to the collection. It rattles away, that specific rhythmic clatter that means summer to you now, the sound of food being forced to keep, and you move around it with the wary competence of a woman who respects what she is handling. Then comes the best part, the part that makes the whole sweltering day worth it. As the sealed jars cool on the counter, the lids begin to pull down, and one by one they sing out, a small, clear, metallic ping as each seal takes, a tiny round of applause from the jar itself. You count them by ear across the evening, ping after ping, and each one is a small victory locked away, a promise kept to your own family months in advance. It is the most satisfying sound in the kitchen calendar. By the end, there is a shelf, and the shelf is a kind of wealth, because rows of jars in the cellar are food security you built with your own hands, tomatoes and peaches and beans and pickles glowing on the shelf like jewels, a larder against the lean cold months when nothing grows. In February, when the garden is dead and the store is dear, you will go down and bring up a jar of summer, and it will taste of the very day you put it up, and the family will eat it without the faintest idea what August it cost. Mrs. Kowalski puts up so many jars her cellar looks like a general store, and she says it plainly, that a full shelf lets her sleep easy. So you sweat through the hottest weeks turning a glut you cannot eat into a store you will need, jar by jar, ping by ping, and when it is done the shelf stands full. It is ancient work, older than the house, a woman putting food by against the winter, so that when the cold comes the family will be fed from a summer they have already forgotten and you never will. You sit down in the afternoon for what may be the first time since dawn, and you sit down with a basket of laundry to fold, because sitting without a task is not a thing your day permits. The television is on, and there is a drama playing that you have followed for months, the kind sponsored by the soap companies who know exactly who is watching at this hour. You fold and you watch, and for 20 minutes the folding feels less like work because someone else's troubles are unfolding on the screen in front of you. It is a strange thing, this rule you never agreed to, that you cannot simply sit. To sit with idle hands in the middle of a weekday feels almost sinful, a thing your mother would have found a chore for within seconds. So even your one rest of the day comes with a basket in your lap. You have made your peace with it by pairing the rest with the lightest task you own, the folding, which the hands can do half asleep, freeing the rest of you to sink briefly into a chair and a story. The drama on the screen is your small daily escape, and the companies know it, which is exactly why it exists. They call these shows soap operas because it is soap and detergent men who pay for them, who worked out long ago that the woman home in the afternoon is the customer, and built an entire kind of story to hold her there between the advertisements for the very products she scrubs the tub with. It is the most honest arrangement in broadcasting. They want you, and they said so, right there in the name. And you do not much mind being wanted, because the show delivers. For a little while you follow other people's troubles, grander and more romantic and more clearly resolved than your own. And there is a real relief in it, a warm, harmless, and second-hand drama that asks nothing of you but your attention. The characters suffer beautifully and at length. Nobody on the show is folding laundry. You fold theirs and yours both, in a sense, and let their troubles carry you a little way out of your own. Your hands never stop the whole time. Shirt, fold, smooth, stack, small clothes matched and squared, towels thirded, the basket slowly emptying into neat piles beside you while your eyes stay on the screen. It is the closest your day comes to leisure, and it is still, technically, work, a rest so thoroughly braided with a task that you could not say for certain which one you are doing. You have gotten so good at resting productively that you are no longer sure you know how to rest any other way. Then the episode ends on its cliff, as it always does, timed to bring you back tomorrow. Because the whole thing is built to be a habit, a soft daily appointment that returns you to the same chair at the same hour to fold the same eternal laundry in front of the same unfinished story, and you keep the appointment, gladly, because it is the one your day makes just barely for you. Mrs. Delmar swears she does not follow her show at all and then can tell you exactly what happened on it, every day, in complete detail, and you have both agreed never to mention this out loud. So the show ends, and the basket is empty, and the small warm interval is over. You carry the folded piles off to their drawers, and the chair goes cold behind you, and the afternoon resumes its ordinary demands. It was 20 minutes. It was hardly a rest at all, braided as it was with a chore and paid for by a soap company. And still you look forward to it every single day, this one soft hour the job allows, sitting down at last, with a basket in your lap, watching someone else's life for a while. You hear the door and the noise level of your house triples, because the children are home from school and they arrive hungry, loud, and full of the day. There are snacks to produce immediately, coats and shoes scattered where they land, and the slow negotiation of homework that has to be overseen even though you have your own list of things still undone. The quiet stretch of the afternoon, such as it was, is over. From now until bedtime, you are back to running several people's evenings at the same time as your own. They come in like a change in the weather, a front of noise and hunger and shed outerwear moving through the front hall. Coats hit the floor, shoes go 2 different directions, lunch sacks are abandoned, half open on the counter, and 3 voices start up at once, each certain its news is the most urgent. You have perhaps 4 seconds of transition before the house is fully occupied again, and you use them to brace, the way a dock braces for a boat coming in a little too fast. The snack is not optional and it is not later. It is now, because a child home from school is a creature of pure immediate appetite and cannot be reasoned with until fed. So you produce it, milk and cookies or bread and butter or apple slices, a small refueling that buys you and the whole afternoon a measure of peace. They eat standing at the counter, still talking, still shedding the day, and you listen to the whole loud download of who did what to whom at recess with one ear while your hands keep moving. And there is homework, which is technically the school's work, and has somehow become yours to supervise. You sit a child down at the kitchen table with a pencil and a page of sums, and you referee the ancient struggle between a young mind and a task it would rather not do, coaxing, checking, re-explaining a thing the teacher apparently explained to a room that was not listening. By every honest estimate, the page of sums will be finished sometime around 1975. You are not paid to teach. You teach anyway, at the kitchen table, between the snack and the supper, because the alternative is a child who falls behind, and that lands on you too. The afternoon becomes a matter of keeping several plates spinning, each child on a different track and all of them needing you. One has homework, one has a scrape and a story, one has decided this is the ideal moment to test every rule you have ever made. You move among them, settling and supplying and refereeing, and somewhere in the middle of it the supper still has to start, because the sacred hour is coming and the meal does not care that you have a spelling list open in front of you. The house that was quiet an hour ago is now full, loud, and entirely awake, because the afternoon shift is its own distinct job, different from the morning and harder in its way, running the children's descent from school through snack, through homework, through the long stretch toward bed, all of it overlapping the cooking and the tidying, and the last items on your own list. You are the hinge. The whole evening turns on. the one keeping the homework moving and the supper cooking and the peace more or less kept, and none of the three could happen without you standing at the center of it. So you spin the plates, and you get the sums finished and the snack cleared and the worst of the squabbles headed off, and you keep the supper going through all of it, because that is the afternoon, and the afternoon is yours to run. By the time the children scatter to play before dinner, you have quietly conducted a small symphony of needs and never once sat down, and the evening, the real event of the day, has not even properly begun. You are preparing for the most watched minute of your day, the moment your husband walks back through the door. The magazines are very clear about how this should go. The house should be calm, the children should be settled, dinner should be underway and smelling like it, and you should have freshened up and put on a pleasant face, because he is coming home from a hard day and the home should be a refuge. Nowhere in the instructions is there any mention of your day which started 5 hours before his and has not stopped. The magazines lay it out like stage directions, and you have read enough of them to know the whole script by heart. Tidy the living room so it greets him serene. Quiet the children so they do not assault him with noise the instant he crosses the threshold. Freshen your lipstick and smooth your hair so the sight of you is pleasant. Have his slippers ready and a cool drink poured. The advice is delivered warmly, helpfully, and it all points one direction, toward making his re-entry soft, and none of it points toward you. So you run the drill, because a version of it is genuinely kind, and the rest is simply what is done. You do a fast sweep of the front rooms, plumping and straightening, hiding the day's debris. You round up the children and lower the volume on the house by main force. You duck to the mirror for a quick repair. The lipstick, the hair, the pleasant face pulled on over the tiredness like a fresh apron over a stained dress. The supper is timed to be ready close on his heels, the smell of it already doing its welcoming work. And here is the quiet joke buried in the whole arrangement, the one nobody says aloud. He is coming home from work to rest. You are already home, and have been working the entire time he was gone, and will keep working straight through the evening he now gets to spend at ease. His day has a door-marked home that he walks through into relief. Your day has no such door, because the place he comes to rest is the place you have been labouring since before he woke, and will go on labouring after he sleeps. You do not resent him for it. Exactly, or not most days, because he did not write the arrangement any more than you did. You both inherited it, whole, from a world that decided long ago whose day ended at the front door and whose did not. He works hard at his job and hands over the paycheck, and that is real. It is only that the same front door means rest to one of you, and simply a change of shift to the other, and only one of you ever gets to notice. In the advertisements, a man loosens his tie into an armchair drawn to receive him, while the woman who made the scene is off the page entirely, holding a spoon. Then the car turns into the drive, and the whole house arranges itself around the sound, because this is the minute it was all for, the calm rooms and the quiet children and the good smell and your pleasant repaired face, and he comes through the door into a warm-ordered home that seems, miraculously, to have simply been this way all along. He does not see the frantic 10 minutes that produce the calm, and he is not meant to, because the whole art of the sacred hour is to make an enormous amount of last-second labour look like a home that is naturally, restfully, and effortlessly nice. He walks in, he is greeted. The evening receives him gently, exactly as designed, and you step back into the kitchen to finish the supper, having produced, one more time, the small daily illusion that this house runs itself and always has, an illusion so convincing that its chief author, standing right there with a spoon in her hand, is the one person in the room nobody thinks to thank for it. You get the whole family to church on Sunday, which is a logistical operation dressed as a rest day. Everyone has to be bathed, in their good clothes, fed enough to survive the service, but not so much that anyone squirms, and out the door at a fixed time in a state of respectability. And church is not the end of your obligations to the community. When a neighbour is sick or grieving or has just had a baby, a dish appears at their door, warm, in a labelled pan, and more often than not the person who cooked and carried it is you. Getting a family to church on time is a campaign that begins Saturday night, with the baths and the laying out of the good clothes, and continues Sunday in a rising tide of small crises, a missing white glove, a shirt that will not stay tucked, a shoe polished and then immediately scuffed. You move through it herding and buttoning and threatening, and somehow, every week, you deliver the whole scrubbed, pressed, respectable lot of them into a pew looking as though your household simply arrives that way, calm and holy, which it emphatically did not. The service is, honestly, its own small rest. One of the few hours you sit still with your hands quiet in your lap and nothing immediately required of you but to be there. You mind the children beside you, of course, passing a peppermint down the road to buy a few minutes of silence, but between the interventions there is a real stillness, a pause in the running, and you take it gratefully. Reverend Cole goes on a little long some Sundays, and you forgive him, because the sitting is worth the sermon. But the community does not run on Sundays alone, and the currency it runs on, quietly, is the casserole. When someone on the street falls ill, or loses a husband, or comes home with a new baby and no strength to cook, food appears at the door, and the food appears because women like you cook it and carry it and hand it over with a soft word. It is how the neighborhood takes care of its own, an unofficial, unpaid, and entirely female welfare system operating out of 100 kitchens, with a network no man ever sees. So you make the dish, on top of your own family's meals, one more supper cooked for a table that is not yours. You choose something that travels and reheats. You cook it with the same care as your own, and you carry it warm down the street in a pan, with your name taped to the bottom. When Eleanor lost her mother, half the street's ovens ran for a week, yours among them, and Eleanor ate for days without lifting a pot, held up by casseroles she will remember longer than the flowers. That is the thing the dish really carries, under the noodles and the sauce. Because a casserole at the door of a grieving house is not really about the food, which is often forgotten by evening, but about the message the food delivers, which is that you are not alone and someone thought of you and the street has closed ranks around your trouble. You have been on the receiving end too, and you remember exactly how it felt, a warm pan in your hands on the worst week of your life, proof that you were held. So you cook, and you carry, and you pass it on, because that is how the debt of kindness works, always forward, always by hand. And so Sunday, the day of rest, turns out to hold as much quiet labour as any other, the church campaign and the community cooking folded neatly in among the usual meals. The service gives you an hour of stillness. The casserole gives someone else a night off from grief. And the whole soft machinery of a neighbourhood that takes care of itself turns, as it always has, on the unpaid hands of the women who cook and carry and quietly hold the street together. You belong to things, and the things have meetings. There is the PTA, where the running of the school is quietly held up by the unpaid labour of mothers. There may be a garden club, a bridge club, a church group, each with its own duties that land on you between all your other duties. You bake for the sale, you staff the table, you organise the drive, you host when it is your turn. None of it counts as work in any official sense, and all of it would collapse immediately if the women simply stopped showing up. The PTA is the largest of these, and it runs the parts of the school no budget covers, which turns out to be most of the good parts. The bake sale that buys the library books, the fall festival, the class party, the fundraising drive with its envelopes and its tallies, all of it organised and staffed and cleaned up after by mothers who are not paid and not thanked and not, as far as the official record shows, working at all. You have chaired a committee or two. You know exactly how much labour hides behind the phrase, just a little school event. A single bake sale can move more product on a Saturday than a small Etsy shop, all of it unpaid. The meetings themselves have a whole quiet politics, and you have learned to navigate them. There is the woman who volunteers everyone but herself, the one who takes on too much and then drowns, the one whose feelings must be managed around the seating for the spring luncheon. Mrs. Pearson runs the PTA like a small nation, gavel in hand, and to get anything sensible done you have learned to bring it to her privately first so she can announce it as her own idea. It is diplomacy, unpaid, practiced over folding chairs and weak coffee. The clubs are lighter but no less obligating. The garden club with its judged arrangements, the bridge club with its rotating, hostessing, and the small terror of the week your table comes to your house, the church circle with its constant projects for people less fortunate. Each one is a genuine pleasure and a genuine duty at the same time, a source of friendship and a source of one more thing you must bake, host, or organise on a schedule that already has no gaps left in it anywhere. You do it because it matters and because it is expected, and the two reasons are so tangled you can no longer separate them. The school truly is better for the fundraising. The friendships truly are real. And also a woman who does not do her part is quietly noted, and the noting has consequences, so the volunteering is never entirely free even when it is freely given. You show up, you take your turn, you carry your share of a load that a whole community leans on and never once puts on its books. All of it runs on women, and none of it admits that women run it. Because the school board and the church council and the town itself would be genuinely astonished to learn how much of their functioning depends on mothers baking, calling, organising, and showing up, an entire unpaid civic workforce hidden in plain sight behind cake sales and folding tables. You are part of that workforce, one of thousands, holding up a corner of the public world in the hours between holding up all of the private one and the public world thanks you, when it thinks of it at all, with a printed word in a program nobody keeps. So you go to the meeting, and you take the assignment, and you bake the 24 cookies for the sale, and you add the committee to the long invisible ledger of things you do that no one counts. The library gets its books, the festival happens, the street stays a place where things get done. And the doing, as always, traces back through 100 kitchens to the unpaid, uncredited, entirely essential hands of the women who simply, reliably, kept showing up. You are the only person in the family who knows everything, and you carry all of it without writing most of it down. You know when the dentist appointment is, whose birthday is coming, which child needs new shoes, when the thank you notes are due, and what you are giving your mother-in-law for Christmas. You track the entire social and medical and emotional life of 5 or 6 people inside your own head, and you keep it running so smoothly that its running is invisible, which means the one time you drop a thread, that is the thing everyone remembers. Somewhere behind your eyes, a small exhausted clerk works a switchboard the size of the county, plugging in appointments, birthdays, and shoe sizes as fast as they arrive, and that clerk has not had a day off since the honeymoon. There is no pot to point to, no floor gleaming, no basket emptied. There is only a woman who appears to be standing still, running a vast, detailed, and silent operation that never once shuts down, not in her waking hours, and not in the few she is given to sleep. The medical side alone is a full accounting. You know when each child last saw the doctor and when the next visit is due, which one is behind on which shot, who is prone to earaches in the winter, and who cannot take the pink medicine. You carry your husband's appointments too, and his mother's increasingly, because a man of this era does not book his own dentist any more than he irons his own shirt. You are the family's entire health department, filing nothing, forgetting nothing, running the whole thing from memory. When the dentist's office telephones to confirm, the receptionist, Mrs. Pardo, asks for you by name, because you are the only one in the house who ever answers. The social calendar is heavier still, and stranger, because it is made of feelings. You remember every birthday, and buy every gift and wrap it and sign the card, in his name as often as yours. You know which relatives are feuding and must be seated apart, which thank you note is now overdue and edging toward insult, which neighbour did you a kindness that must be quietly repaid. You manage the family's entire standing in the world, its debts and its duties of affection, and you manage it so no one else ever has to feel the weight of remembering. And it is precisely because you do it so well that no one sees it as anything. A thing done invisibly and without fail comes to seem like weather, like a thing that simply happens, and the family drifts through a life of remembered birthdays and kept appointments and easy relations with the vague sense that these things arrange themselves. They do not arrange themselves. They are arranged, constantly, effortfully, by a woman running a calendar in her head that has no pages and no end, and shows up in no accounting anywhere. The only time it becomes visible is the day it fails. Because let one thread drop, one appointment missed, one birthday forgotten, and suddenly the invisible labour flashes into view, not as the enormous ongoing achievement it is, but as a single lapse, a rare failure in a system no one knew was running until the moment it hiccuped. You kept 100 threads flawlessly all year and heard nothing. You forgot one dentist appointment and heard about it clear through Christmas. So you carry it all, silently, the whole turning calendar of a family's life, and you keep it running because you are the only one who can, or at least the only one anyone expects to. It is the deepest and least visible of all your jobs, the one that leaves no trace and takes no rest, the mind of the household humming away behind a face that only ever looks like it is thinking about supper. And supper, of course, is on the calendar too, along with everything else, filed in the one place the whole family stores its memory, which is you. You feel something in the middle of the afternoon that you do not have a good word for, and you are fairly sure you are not supposed to feel it. The house is quiet, the tasks are done or soon will be, and there is a flat, hollow stretch of hours where you find yourself standing in the kitchen wondering what exactly is wrong with you, given that you have everything a woman is supposed to want. There is a small brown bottle in the medicine cabinet that the doctor said would help, and it is closer to hand than you would like. It arrives at the strangest possible moment, this feeling, precisely when nothing is wrong. The floor is waxed, the wash is folded, the supper is planned, the children are accounted for, and into that rare pocket of quiet, instead of relief, seeps a small grey nothing, a sense of standing in a warm, clean, comfortable house feeling oddly like a guest in it. You have a good husband, healthy children, and a lime green salad chilling in the refrigerator. By every measure printed anywhere you have won. So the feeling makes no sense, which somehow makes it worse. You went to the doctor about it, once, and the visit was its own small comedy. You tried to describe a hollowness that had no symptoms, and Dr. Ainsley listened for a moment and then wrote on his pad, the way men in this decade write everything, quickly and without looking up, and told you it was nerves, and handed you the little bottle across the desk. Nerves. As though the trouble were a loose wire, and you a lamp that had begun, unaccountably, to flicker in an otherwise well-appointed room. The bottle sits in the cabinet now, and it has exactly one idea, which it repeats whenever you open the mirror. The pills are quietly everywhere this decade, passed between women, advertised to the men who might prescribe them, and if you saw the advertisement you would laugh because it shows a woman almost exactly like you, only smoother, gesturing serenely at a sink she has clearly made her peace with. The pill's great promise, printed right there, is not that you will feel better. It is that the housekeeping will not suffer while you do not. And there is the flat, absurd heart of the whole thing, laid bare. A vast and cheerful industry has looked at a woman standing hollow in a clean kitchen and concluded that the problem to be solved is the kitchen's, that whatever is dimming in her must be smoothed over so the vacuuming continues uninterrupted. The bottle is not really offered to comfort you. It is offered to keep you running quietly, like oil poured into a machine that has started, faintly, to squeak. You close the cabinet. Not today, you decide, mostly. Because you suspect, without quite having the words for it, that the hollow is not a loose wire, and not a personal defect, and not a thing a small brown pill was ever going to reach, that it is instead something about the shape of the whole arrangement, the long unbroken days, the work that vanishes, the self that has been folded so small and so often that you have trouble some afternoons finding it. You cannot say that yet. Nobody has handed you the sentence for it. So it stays a nameless, grey and formless weather that comes in the quiet hours and goes when the bus does. And the bus in fact is coming. You hear it 3 streets off, and the sound pulls you back into the version of yourself the afternoon requires, and you straighten your apron and put the feeling away on the high shelf with the good cups. The children will burst in hungry and loud, and the hollow will scatter like startled birds, and you will be busy again, which is its own kind of medicine, cheaper than the bottle and easier to explain. The feeling will keep. It always does. It will be there tomorrow, at the same quiet hour, still waiting to be named. You are handed a book by a neighbour over coffee, and she tells you, quietly, that you have to read it. It has a plain cover and a strange title, and inside it a woman has written down the exact feeling you had that flat afternoon in the kitchen, the one you assumed was yours alone and slightly shameful. The same year, a columnist in the newspaper starts making jokes about this life that are so accurate they sting. Something is shifting out, where you can just barely see it. And for the first time the job you do all day is being named out loud. The book moves the way everything important in your world moves, hand to hand between women, passed over coffee with a look that says more than the words do. The recipes travel this way, and the remedies, and the diaper folds, and now this, a plain volume that Mrs. Delmar presses on you with unusual seriousness, saying only that you will want to sit down for it. So one night, after the house is finally asleep, you do sit down for it, alone at the kitchen table under the one lamp, and you begin to read. And there it is on the page, your own hollow afternoon, described by a woman named Betty Friedan, who has apparently been standing invisibly in your kitchen the whole time. She calls it the problem that has no name, and the moment you read the phrase, the grey feeling that has haunted your quiet hours stops being a private defect and becomes, suddenly, a thing, a shared, studied, and named thing, felt by women in 1,000 kitchens exactly like yours. You are not flickering. You never were. You are reading by the wrong light. The relief of it is almost physical, and it is a strange relief, because nothing about your day has changed. The floor still needs waxing tomorrow. But a feeling you cannot name is a feeling you must suffer alone, and a feeling with a name is a feeling you can hold at arm's length and turn over and discuss with the woman next door, and that difference, it turns out, is nearly everything. Something shut and airless has cracked open, and a little draught of company has come through, and it is not only the book. The whole air has started, quietly, to change. In the newspaper, a woman named Irma Bombeck begins writing about this life with a wit so exact it feels like being seen, turning the daily absurdity into comedy you laugh at with something catching in your throat. On the television, a tall, cheerful woman named Julia Child cooks with obvious joy and drops things on purpose and apologizes to no one, and the sight of it does something small and loosening to you, a permission you did not know you were waiting for. None of it lightens the load by a single shirt. That is not the point of it, because the point is that the silence has broken, that the enormous invisible job you and every woman you know performs all day has finally been spoken aloud, named, joked about, argued over, dragged out of the private kitchen and into the shared light where a thing can at last be looked at honestly. What gets looked at can be questioned, and what gets questioned does not stay fixed forever, and you can feel, without yet knowing the shape of it, that something set in stone has begun, very slightly, to move. So you close the book late that night, and you do not feel finished or freed or any of the large words. You feel, mostly, less alone, which is a small thing and an enormous one. Tomorrow the percolator will gurgle before dawn, and the whole great unpaid machine will turn again, exactly as it always has. But you will run it, now, as a woman who has read her own life described in someone else's hand, and who knows, at last, that the strange heavy job she does all day is real, is seen, and has, finally, a name. You spent the day rising before anyone else, ironing a bedsheet nobody would ever see, waxing a floor so a child could track mud across it, licking 1,200 stamps for a free lamp, and suspending fruit inside gelatin for the neighbours. You raised 3 children by a worn paperback, defended a single hairdo for an entire week, folded laundry in front of a soap opera, and carried the whole family's calendar around inside your own head. And then you got up and did all of it again the next day. The women who actually lived this were not the smiling figures in the advertisements. They were tired and funny and endlessly capable, running a job that had no wages, no title, and no end to the day, and running it with a skill the world was careful never to notice. They fed families on a single paycheck and held whole neighbourhoods together with warm casseroles carried down the street, and most of them never once heard the words "thank you" attached to any of it. They kept the lights on and the shirts pressed and the children fed, and for a very long time nobody thought to say out loud how much that quietly took. By the middle of the decade, someone finally did, and a job done in silence for generations began at last to be spoken of in the daylight. Thank you for spending this quiet hour here with me, letting these ordinary, remarkable days carry you gently towards sleep. There is nothing left on your list tonight. The percolator can wait until morning, so let your shoulders drop. Let the pillow take the whole weight of your head. Let your breathing go slow and easy, and let the long day, whatever it happened to hold, fade softly into the dark. You have done more than enough. Rest now. Sleep well.